Welcome. I'm Magnus, and I bring you horror stories to help you relax, or maybe to keep you up at night. Tell us where you're from. Are there spooky forests nearby? If you're a fan of scary stories, subscribe and drop a like. Get cozy, and let's begin. My name is Elliot Thorne, and at 57 years old, I thought I'd seen everything during my 30 years as a park ranger at Voyageurs National Park in northern Minnesota. I now live in Rochester, where I've settled into a quiet retirement with my German Shepherd, Rusty, and a collection of wilderness survival books I never thought I'd need to reference again. The familiar ache in my right knee, a souvenir from a search and rescue mission gone wrong in 13, reminds me daily that my adventuring days should be behind me. The call came from my old colleague, Marcus Halverson. His voice carried that forced casualness that immediately set me on edge. 3 hikers had gone missing in the northern section of the park over the past month. The official reports cited them as probable animal attacks or disorientation cases, but Marcus didn't buy it. The tracks we found, Elliot, he whispered into the phone, they're not from any animal I've ever seen. I laughed it off. Minnesota winters can play tricks on the mind, and Marcus always did have an overactive imagination. Still, something about the tremor in his voice dug into my subconscious. I found myself pulling out my old topographical maps that evening, tracing paths through the dense forest where I'd spent the better part of my life. The area where the hikers disappeared was a remote section I knew well, an old-growth forest with ravines so deep they never see direct sunlight. The locals had stories about that place, stories I'd dismissed as campfire tales designed to keep tourists on marked trails. 2 days later, I packed my truck with camping gear I hadn't touched in years. My daughter Abigail called just as I was loading the final supplies. "Dad, you're not seriously going back there alone, are you?" The concern in her voice was palpable. I assured her it was just a quick trip to help Marcus document some wildlife patterns, a harmless lie that tasted bitter even as I said it. I didn't mention the nightmares that had plagued me since Marcus's call, nightmares of massive footprints filling with rainwater and something large moving through trees in my peripheral vision. The 5-hour drive north gave me too much time to think. I replayed memories of strange incidents over my career, unexplained noises that echoed across the lake at night, equipment found mangled miles from where it had been left, and that one winter when something had stalked our ranger station for 3 consecutive nights, leaving prints too large to belong to any documented species. We'd written it all off. That's what rational people do. Marcus met me at the ranger station, his face weathered by more than just age and sun. 4 other people stood behind him. Diane Kowalski, the new head ranger, her assistant Kevin Merritt, barely out of college, and a middle-aged couple introduced as the Parkers, wildlife biologists studying wolf migration patterns. They'd all agreed to join our expedition into the Northern Territory, though no one seemed particularly enthusiastic. The uneasy silence as Marcus spread the map on the table told me everyone had heard the stories. "We'll set up base camp here." Marcus pointed to a clearing near Rainy Lake. "It's about 3 miles from where the last hiker was reported missing." I noticed he'd chosen a spot with clear sight lines and multiple escape routes, standard procedure for potentially dangerous terrain, but something about his methodical planning suggested he was preparing for more than harsh wilderness. The others leaned in, their faces illuminated by the harsh fluorescent light overhead, shadows deepening the concern etched into their features. As we finalized our plans, Diane pulled me aside. "Elliot, there's something Marcus isn't telling you." She glanced over her shoulder before continuing. "The tracks, they're consistent. Same stride length, same depth. Whatever made them weighs at least 500 pounds, walks on 2 legs, and shows signs of intelligence." She handed me her phone with photos of massive, humanoid footprints pressed deep into muddy soil, branches deliberately arranged around them, as if to obscure their path. My mouth went dry as I stared at the images. They matched perfectly with sightings I'd privately documented years ago, but had been too afraid to officially report. The weather forecast predicted clear skies for our departure tomorrow, but dark clouds were already gathering on the horizon as we left the station. The air felt heavy, charged with a strange electricity that made the hair on my arms stand on end. I tried to convince myself it was just a storm coming in from Canada, but deep down, I knew better. Something was waiting for us in those woods, something that had been there all along. Dawn broke with an unsettling quietude over the ranger station. No birdsong, no rustling of small creatures in the underbrush, just silence pressing against my eardrums like cotton wool. We loaded our gear into two 4x4s, the equipment clanking with a finality that made my stomach clench. Kevin kept checking his satellite phone, his fingers drumming nervously against the plastic case. "No signal already?" I asked. He nodded, confusion clouding his young face. We were still well within range of the nearest tower. The drive to our entry point took longer than expected. Fallen trees blocked the old service road, too many to be coincidental. By the time we parked and shouldered our packs, midday heat had settled over the forest like a wool blanket. Marcus took point, with Diane bringing up the rear. The formation wasn't lost on me, most experienced in front and back. Standard protocol for entering potentially hostile territory. Our first mile passed uneventfully, but the forest grew denser, older, as we pushed north. Trees here had never been logged, their massive trunks testimony to centuries of undisturbed growth. The canopy blocked most sunlight, creating a perpetual twilight that played tricks on the eyes. I caught myself repeatedly glancing at movements that dissolved into shadows when directly observed. A disturbing sensation of being watched prickled at the back of my neck, the kind of primal warning system humans haven't evolved out of. We reached the clearing by late afternoon and established camp with practiced efficiency. The Parkers set up their research equipment, including audio recording devices they positioned in a perimeter around our tents. "Wolf calls," Dr. Linda Parker explained when she caught me watching. Her husband Robert added, among other things, with a meaningful look that told me wildlife research wasn't their only agenda. They'd been tracking something specific, and I doubted it had four legs and howled at the moon. After a tense dinner around a struggling campfire, Marcus finally shared what he'd been holding back. The last hiker, Jacob Myers, we found his backpack 2 days ago. He produced a plastic evidence bag containing a torn fragment of nylon fabric. It was 20 feet up in a tree, wedged in the branches. And this was inside. He carefully unfolded a notebook, its pages wavy from exposure to elements. I leaned forward as he turned to a page covered in frantic scribbling. "They mimic human voices," was written repeatedly, the final repetition trailing off the page as if the writer had been interrupted. That night, I volunteered for first watch. The others retreated to their tents while I sat by our dimming fire, my father's old Winchester across my lap. The forest had grown unnaturally still again. Around midnight, a snapping twig shattered the silence maybe 50 yards out. I swept my flashlight toward the sound, but caught nothing in its beam. 10 minutes later, it came again, this time from a different direction. Whatever it was circling us, staying just beyond the reach of light. At 2 a.m., I woke Kevin for his shift and crawled into my tent, though sleep seemed an impossible luxury. I must have dozed off eventually because I jolted awake to Kevin's urgent whisper outside my tent. "Elliot, you need to see this." The sky had lightened to pre-dawn gray as I followed him to the edge of our clearing. There, pressed into soft earth, was a line of tracks that hadn't been there the evening before. Massive, barefoot impressions that sank nearly 3 inches into the soil. They approached within 10 feet of where I'd been sitting on watch, then circled the entire camp before disappearing into the underbrush. "Should we wake the others?" Kevin's voice quavered slightly. I nodded, unable to find words as I stared at a partial handprint pressed against a tree trunk at chest height. 5 fingers, opposable thumb, but nearly twice the size of my own hand. Fresh sap glistened in deep grooves where something had scraped away bark with considerable force. A territorial marking? A warning? My mouth went desert dry as I recalled old campfire tales of an 8-foot shadow that walked like a man, but moved like nothing human. Back at camp, the mood shifted from scientific expedition to something far more primal as everyone examined the tracks. Diane wanted to call for extraction, but our satellite phone remained stubbornly without signal. The Parkers exchanged meaningful glances before Robert pulled out a recording device. "We caught something last night," he said, pressing play. Through static came a sound that froze my blood, a perfect imitation of my own voice calling Kevin's name, recorded at 1:37 a.m. when I'd been sound asleep. The implications hung in the air between us, unspoken but undeniable. Whatever stalked these woods wasn't just an undiscovered animal, it was something far more disturbing. The decision to relocate our camp came unanimously. We needed higher ground, fewer access points, somewhere more defensible. By mid-morning, we'd moved to a rocky outcrop overlooking a small lake, our tents clustered tightly together. The lingering fog that clung to the water's surface obscured the far shore, creating an eerie boundary between the known and unknown. Marcus and I spent an hour setting up trip wires attached to noisemakers, old ranger tricks for bear country, while Diane cataloged the plaster casts she'd made of the footprints before we left. The Parkers busied themselves with their audio equipment, reviewing recordings from the previous night with intense concentration. I caught fragments of their hushed conversation, subharmonic frequencies, outside normal vocal range, cognitive implications. Their scientific detachment seemed increasingly at odds with our situation. Whatever they were tracking, they'd studied it before. Kevin remained unusually quiet, his earlier eagerness replaced by a 1,000-yard stare that worried me more than any physical threat. Around 2 in the afternoon, a series of wood knocks echoed across the lake. 3 distinct impacts followed by 2 more after a precise 5-second pause. Tactical, intentional, communication. We froze in place, listening as similar patterns responded from the forest behind us. They were coordinating, surrounding us. Marcus grabbed his rifle, chambering around with practiced ease. I had a run-in back in '09, he muttered. Never reported it officially. Thought they'd pull my badge for mental evaluation. His hands were steady, but fear flickered behind his eyes. The fear of a man confronting something he'd spent years trying to convince himself wasn't real. The first physical evidence of our stalker came an hour later. Diane's scream cut through the campsite as she returned from collecting water. I found her standing rigid at the tree line, pointing mutely at a freshly killed deer hanging from a branch 15 feet off the ground. Its neck had been broken with such force that the head twisted at an impossible angle, and long, precise cuts had opened its belly, emptying it of organs. No predator I knew could hoist a full-grown doe that high or butcher it with such surgical precision. "It's sending a message," Robert Parker said behind me, "establishing dominance, showing what it could do to us." As dusk approached, fog thickened around our position, reducing visibility to mere yards. Our campfire fought valiantly against the encroaching gloom, but created more shadows than light. The first rock sailed through the mist at 8:17 p.m., landing with a heavy thud between our tents. Then another, and another, thrown with remarkable accuracy but deliberately missing us. Psychological warfare. My military training recognized the tactic immediately. Sleep deprivation, stress induction, breakdown of group cohesion. Whatever stalked us wasn't just strong, it was strategic. The breaking point came at midnight. Kevin had been growing increasingly agitated, pacing the perimeter and jumping at every sound. When a low, guttural growl rumbled from just beyond our firelight, he snapped. "It's toying with us," he shouted, grabbing his camera and flashlight. "I'm getting evidence nobody can dismiss." Before anyone could stop him, he plunged into the darkness. Marcus and I exchanged one horrified look before grabbing our weapons and pursuing him, shouting his name. The fog swallowed our voices, throwing them back at us in distorted echoes. 50 yards into the mist, we found Kevin's flashlight, still illuminated but abandoned on the ground. A trail of disturbed undergrowth led deeper into the trees. We followed cautiously, our own lights creating bobbing islands of visibility in the smothering white. The silence struck me first. No insects, no night birds, as if all natural life had evacuated the area. Then came the smell, musky, primal, like wet fur and something metallic that reminded me of blood. "Elliot," Marcus whispered, pointing upward with his light beam. There, swaying slightly in the canopy, was Kevin's bright red backpack, suspended at least 30 feet above ground. That's when we heard it, Kevin's voice calling for help, distant but clear. Then again, closer, from a different direction. Then again, from behind us. The same inflection, the same cadence, repeated with unnatural precision. "They mimic human voices," I whispered, Jacob Meyer's frantic notebook entries suddenly, horrifyingly clear. As if responding to my realization, a chorus of voices erupted around us. Perfect imitations of Kevin, of Marcus, of myself, coming from everywhere at once. Beneath them rumbled a sound too deep to be human, a chest-vibrating hum that seemed to emanate from the earth itself. The attack came without warning. Something massive crashed through the underbrush to our right, a blur of motion too fast to track. Marcus fired twice, the muzzle flash momentarily illuminating a tall, broad silhouette that disappeared before my brain could process what I'd seen. A guttural roar shook the trees, followed by heavy impacts circling our position. Not one creature, but many. I fired at movement, the Winchester's kick bruising my shoulder. A high-pitched, keening wail answered. Pain, anger, I couldn't tell. Then silence fell again, heavier than before. Back to camp, Marcus hissed, but as we turned, a shower of broken branches crashed down, blocking our retreat. In the chaos, something struck the back of my head with stunning force. I staggered, vision blurring, as Marcus's shout cut off with sickening abruptness. As consciousness slipped away, my failing light caught a glimpse of something impossible, an enormous hand, covered in dark hair, reaching toward me. Its fingers elongated, nails blackened and curved like claws. My last coherent thought was that the legends had it wrong. This was no gentle forest giant avoiding human contact. This was something ancient and predatory that had been hunting us all along. I awoke to the taste of copper and dirt. My face pressed against damp forest floor, body aching from what must have been hours in the same position. Disorientation clouded my thoughts as I struggled to focus, the throbbing at the base of my skull making even the slightest movement nauseating. Dawn light filtered weakly through dense fog, revealing I was alone. No Marcus, no weapon, just crushing silence broken only by my own ragged breathing. Forcing myself upright triggered a wave of vertigo that nearly sent me back to the ground. Blood had crusted along my temple and down my neck, and my jacket was torn at the shoulder, exposing scratches I didn't remember receiving. Instinct screamed to call out for the others, but the memory of those mimicking voices locked the sound in my throat. Communication meant revealing my position. Instead, I oriented myself using the pale glow of sunrise and began moving with deliberate care back toward what I hoped was our camp. The forest had transformed overnight. What should have been familiar terrain now seemed distorted, landmarks shifted or missing entirely. Tree trunks bore deep, parallel gouges at regular intervals, territorial markings that hadn't been there the day before. Most disturbing were the broken branches overhead, snapped not by wind, but by something heavy passing through the canopy. They created a visible trail, as if something had been dragging something else from tree to tree. The image of Kevin's backpack suspended 30 feet up flashed unbidden through my mind. After 20 minutes of painfully slow progress, I found our trip wires, or what remained of them. The carefully placed warning system had been methodically dismantled, each wire coiled into neat spirals at the base of trees. Not broken in haste or by accident, but deliberately deconstructed. Studied. Understood. Cold terror washed through me as I realized whatever we faced didn't just possess brute strength. It had intelligence that allowed it to recognize and neutralize our defenses with disturbing precision. Our campsite came into view through thinning fog, and the scene froze me mid-step. The tents remained standing but had been systematically searched, contents strewn across the clearing. No blood, no signs of violence, just the methodical investigation of our equipment. Our food supplies were untouched, but every electronic device lay smashed beyond repair. Satellite phones, GPS units, cameras, all destroyed with surgical precision, their circuit boards exposed and fragmented. Not random destruction, but targeted elimination of technology. Most chilling was our research table, where the plaster casts of footprints had been arranged in a perfect circle, facing outward like sentinels. Movement caught my peripheral vision, a flash of color against the drab forest. Diane emerged from the trees, her normally immaculate ranger uniform filthy and torn. Blood matted her hair on one side, but she walked steadily enough. Behind her came Linda Parker, supporting her husband who limped heavily on an improvised walking stick. No Marcus, no Kevin. The weight of their absence pressed down like a physical force as we converged in stunned silence. They took them, Linda finally whispered, her scientific detachment shattered. We heard the struggle, but by the time we reached the area, she trailed off, looking to her husband. Robert picked up the thread, his voice clinical despite his obvious pain. They're organized. Pack hunters with hierarchical social structure. We've been tracking them for years, but never. He swallowed hard. Never seen this level of aggression. They usually avoid confrontation. Diane's bitter laugh cut through his analysis. The missing hikers weren't accidents, were they? You knew what was out here. The accusation hung between them as Robert looked away, guilt written across his features. We thought observation was safe. They've never coordinated like this before. The sun had climbed to midday position when we determined our only option: immediate evacuation along the most direct route to the vehicles. Whatever these creatures wanted, they demonstrated their ability to isolate and capture us at will. Our camping equipment would have to be abandoned. Speed now took priority over all else. Diane plotted our course using a paper map she'd kept in her pocket. 4 miles of difficult terrain, but potentially manageable before dusk if we pushed hard. They're less active during daylight, Robert offered, though his tone carried little conviction. We moved in tight formation through the forest, hyper-aware of every sound and movement. The weight of watching eyes pressed down from all sides, though nothing visibly pursued us. Around mile 2, we came upon a scene that nearly broke our resolve. Kevin's camera lay shattered in a small clearing, surrounded by a circle of freshly arranged stones. Beside it sat Marcus's ranger hat, seemingly untouched, positioned as if waiting for its owner's return. A line of enormous footprints led away from the scene, deliberately pressed into soft earth. Not a warning this time, an invitation. They wanted us to follow. It's a trap, I stated flatly, though the urge to pursue those tracks pulled at me with almost physical force. The thought of abandoning Marcus and Kevin to whatever fate awaited them threatened to override my survival instinct. Linda noticed my hesitation. They're smart enough to exploit emotional connections, she warned. If we follow, we'll end up just like them. Harsh but true. We had no weapons, no means of communication, and dwindling daylight. Our only chance was reaching the vehicles and bringing back armed reinforcements. The attack came a half-mile later as we crossed a shallow stream. Something massive displaced water upstream, a dark shape moving with unnatural speed along the bank. Before we could react, another form crashed through the underbrush behind us. Outflanked, herded like prey. Run, I shouted, shoving Diane toward the densest thicket. We scattered in controlled pairs as we'd planned, maximized survival chances for at least some of us. Robert and Linda veered east toward rocky terrain where they might find defensible ground. Diane and I plunged through nearly impenetrable brush, thorns slashing our already battered bodies. Behind us, something pursued with relentless determination. Not the crashing charge of a predator confident in its superior strength, but the measured pace of a hunter that knew its quarry would eventually tire. Branches snapped rhythmically, always maintaining exact distance, close enough to pressure our flight, far enough to conserve energy. My lungs burned as we pushed through punishing terrain, Diane's labored breathing matching my own. The psychological toll of being hunted mounted with each passing minute, wearing down our resolve more effectively than any physical barrier. We broke free from the thicket onto an old logging road, an unexpected stroke of luck that might provide faster passage. Hope surged briefly until I spotted the problem. The road didn't appear on any of our maps. It shouldn't exist. We'd been herded here deliberately. As realization dawned, a massive tree trunk crashed across the path ahead, blocking our forward progress. Another followed behind us, narrowly missing Diane, who dove aside with a strangled cry. Pinned down, channeled exactly where they wanted us. What emerged from the forest then defied everything I thought I knew about North American wildlife. Standing at least 8 feet tall, its broad shoulders and powerful limbs covered in dense dark hair, the creature moved with an unnerving blend of animal power and human deliberation. Not Bigfoot as portrayed in grainy photographs or campfire tales. This was something far more primal and intelligent. Its eyes locked onto mine with undeniable sentience, cold calculation evident in their amber depths. Behind it, 2 more forms materialized from the trees, slightly smaller but no less intimidating. In that moment of frozen terror, salvation came from the most unexpected source. The rumble of an approaching vehicle broke the standoff, Forest Service trucks responding to our missed check-in. The creatures melted back into the forest with astonishing speed and silence for their size, leaving no evidence of their presence except our own traumatized testimony. As Diane flagged down the approaching rangers with manic energy, I stared into the wall of trees where the creatures had vanished. A flash of movement caught my eye. One remained, partially concealed, watching. It raised a massive hand in what could almost be interpreted as a gesture of farewell. Or perhaps a promise. This isn't over. The search for Marcus and Kevin began in earnest the next morning. For teams, heavily armed and equipped with thermal imaging, combed the forest in expanding grid patterns. I insisted on joining despite the doctor's concerns about my concussion, unable to abandon the men to whatever fate had befallen them. The Parkers were conspicuously absent, whisked away by stern-faced government officials within hours of our rescue. Their research equipment, what remained of it, disappeared into unmarked vehicles before anyone could examine the data they'd collected. The official search lasted 72 hours before being downgraded. Too much territory, too little evidence, and mounting pressure from authorities to contain what they were calling a bear attack incident. Diane and I exchanged knowing glances during the final briefing. Bears don't dismantle electronic equipment with surgical precision. Bears don't arrange stones in perfect circles or stage personal items for psychological effect. Most importantly, bears don't mimic human voices to separate their prey from the group. Against all protocols and direct orders, I returned to the forest alone on the fourth day. Something kept drawing me back. Guilt, obsession, or perhaps something more primal. The forest felt different now, the air charged with a tension that raised the hair on my arms. I followed the route we'd taken during our escape, searching for any sign of our missing companions. The circles of stones remained, untouched since our departure, but Marcus's hat had vanished. Whatever statement the creatures had been making, it had evolved. At the clearing where we'd last seen Kevin, I found something new. A crude structure assembled from broken branches formed a kind of shelter or marker. Within it sat Kevin's journal, its pages untouched by rain despite days in the open. The final entry, dated the morning of his disappearance, contained a single line. They've been watching us for generations. We're not the researchers here. A cold certainty settled in my gut. The creatures hadn't just been defending territory. They'd been studying us, perhaps for longer than we'd studied them. The realization came too late to process fully before I noticed the silence. No birds, no insects. That same unnatural quiet that had preceded previous encounters. Movement flickered between distant trees, too coordinated to be random. They'd been waiting for me. Of course they had. They knew I would return alone, driven by the very human connections they'd observed and exploited. I'd walked willingly into their experiment, a perfect subject demonstrating predictable behavior patterns. I should have run. Every survival instinct screamed for immediate retreat. Instead, I stood my ground and did something unprecedented. I spoke directly to the forest. I know you can understand me. I called out, voice steadier than I felt. I'm not leaving without knowing what happened to my friends. For long moments, nothing responded but wind through trees. Then branches cracked to my left as something large shifted position. Not approaching, but not retreating either. Waiting. What happened next will haunt me until my final days. From the underbrush emerged a figure I recognized immediately despite his changed appearance. Marcus walked with an unnatural gait, his ranger uniform torn and filthy, eyes vacant, yet somehow alert. Behind him loomed a massive shape, partially concealed by foliage. Marcus stopped 10 yards away, head tilted at an odd angle as if listening to something I couldn't hear. When he spoke, the words emerged in his voice but with cadence and structure that were decidedly not his own. Observer returns. Pattern confirmed. The sentences emerged mechanically, as if being forced through human vocal cords not designed for the underlying thoughts. Others integrated. Knowledge exchange progressing. I struggled to maintain composure as understanding dawned. They weren't killing their captives, they were incorporating them, somehow using them to bridge the communication gap between our species. Marcus took another jerky step forward. Long observation concludes. Territory shifting. Human expansion forces adaptation. His eyes briefly cleared, genuine terror flashing across his features before vacancy returned. I backed away slowly, maintaining eye contact with whatever was using Marcus as a mouthpiece. Let them go, I pleaded, knowing even as I spoke the futility of the request. Whatever process had begun couldn't be reversed. The vacant expression in Marcus's eyes told me he'd already been hollowed out, his humanity replaced by something else. Territory negotiation required, came the stilted response. Representatives selected. Integration necessary for understanding. Marcus gestured toward the forest behind him, where shadows moved with purposeful intent. Return with authority figures. Discuss boundaries. The implications hit like a physical blow. These creatures weren't just defending their home. They were preparing for diplomatic contact after decades or centuries of covert observation. They'd taken Marcus and Kevin not as prey, but as cultural interpreters, their minds somehow harvested for linguistic and social information. Most disturbing was the calculated patience this revealed. How long had they watched us, learning our patterns, preparing for the inevitable collision of our expanding territories? My retreat became less coordinated as panic finally overwhelmed training. I stumbled backward, unwilling to turn my back on Marcus and whatever controlled him. From the trees emerged Kevin, moving with the same unnatural coordination, his expression similarly vacant. Deadline approaching, he announced in that same disconnected manner. Human expansion continues. Territory conflict inevitable without negotiated agreement. Both men took synchronized steps forward, driving me back toward the logging road where vehicles might offer escape. I ran then, abandoning any pretense of controlled withdrawal. Behind me came no sounds of pursuit. They weren't trying to catch me this time, just deliver their message. I reached my truck parked at the ranger station and drove with reckless speed back to civilization, hands shaking so badly I could barely grip the steering wheel. The authorities would never believe me. The Parkers had been silenced. Diane was being transferred to a station in Arizona, her report of the incident officially classified. I had become the sole uncompromised witness to first contact with a species that had been living alongside us in secret for generations. 3 weeks later, development plans were announced for the northern section of Voyageurs National Park, a new visitor center, expanded trails, and infrastructure to support increased tourism. Construction would begin in the exact territory where our encounter had occurred. I filed formal objections based on environmental concerns, made calls to every contact I had in the Forest Service, and was systematically ignored or redirected. The deadline the creatures had mentioned was approaching, and human bureaucracy was ensuring we would blunder past it without even recognizing the catastrophe we were inviting. Last night, I received a package with no return address. Inside was Marcus's ranger hat, now adorned with strange markings carved into the leather band. A note in unfamiliar handwriting contained coordinates and a date 3 weeks from now, along with the words, "Final opportunity for territorial negotiation. Bring authority representatives. Further integration specimens will be collected if agreement not reached." The implied threat couldn't be clearer. Either we acknowledge their existence and negotiate boundaries, or they would continue harvesting human minds for information while defending their territory against our encroachment. Tomorrow I leave for Washington to make one final desperate attempt to convince someone with actual authority to take this seriously. If I fail, I'll have no choice but to return to those woods alone on the specified date, knowing I'll likely become the next integration specimen in an escalating conflict between species. What keeps me awake at night isn't fear of what they might do to me. It's the certainty that we've been sharing this continent with an intelligent, organized species for centuries without ever recognizing their existence. And now, our first official contact might also be the beginning of an interspecies war neither side truly wants, all because we couldn't stop expanding long enough to notice we weren't alone in the forest. Sweat beads on my forehead as I haul my camping gear from the truck, the Minnesota air thick with pine and damp earth. I'm Leland Warwick, 62 years old, and I live in Duluth, a good 3-hour drive from this spot in Superior National Forest. Retired after 30 years as a park ranger, I figured it was time to revisit the wilds I once patrolled. This forest, with its endless lakes and tangled underbrush, feels like an old friend. I'm not alone. My nephew Theo, a wiry 25-year-old with a knack for bad jokes, insisted on tagging along. Then there's Mara, a sharp-tongued botanist in her 40s, and her teenage son, Gideon, who's glued to his phone despite zero signal. We're setting up camp near Lake Jeanette, a quiet spot I use to check for poachers. The sun's dipping low, painting the sky blood red. Theo's already got a fire going, cracking jokes about roasting marshmallows until they scream. I roll my eyes but grin. He's got his dad's humor, my late brother's. Mara's inspecting some moss, muttering about rare species, while Gideon sulks, kicking rocks. I unpack my tent, the same one I used on ranger patrols, sturdy enough for a blizzard. The forest hums with life. Crickets, distant loons, a rustle of leaves. It's peaceful, but there's a weight in my chest, like the air's too heavy. I chalk it up to being back after so long. This place has history, ranger stories of lost hikers, strange sightings. I never bought into the Bigfoot crap, but the tale stuck with me. Mara calls us over, holding up a weird plant with spiky leaves. This shouldn't be here, she says, frowning. It's invasive, aggressive. Theo laughs, saying it looks like something from a horror flick. I nod, but my mind's elsewhere. I'm remembering a night years ago, a hiker who swore he saw something massive moving through the trees. I wrote it off as booze or fear. Now, standing here, I feel watched. Not the friendly kind, either. I shake it off, helping Theo with the fire. Gideon finally puts his phone down, asking about bears. I tell him they're around, but usually avoid campfires. The stars are out now, sharp against the black sky. We're swapping stories. Mara's talking about her research. Theo's got some dumb tale about a haunted gas station. I share a ranger story, keeping it light, about a guy who got lost and thought squirrels were guiding him out. Everyone laughs, but I'm scanning the tree line. Something's off. Not a sound, not a shadow, just a gut feeling, the kind that kept me alive on the job. I don't say anything. No need to spook the others. Yet, Theo's trying to teach Gideon how to whittle, and it's a mess, with chips everywhere, Gideon cursing under his breath. Mara's sketching that weird plant in her notebook, her face lit by the fire. I'm sipping coffee, the bitter taste grounding me. I tell myself it's just nostalgia messing with my head. This forest is my turf, my second home. But as I glance at the dark beyond our camp, I can't shake the sense that something's waiting out there. Something that knows I'm back. Mara notices me staring into the woods. "You okay, Leland?" she asks, her voice low. I nod, forcing a smile. Just taking it all in. She doesn't push, but her eyes linger on me. Theo's now arguing with Gideon about whether aliens could survive in Minnesota winters. It's normal, cozy even, but my ranger instincts are screaming. I check my knife, still clipped to my belt. Old habit. The fire crackles, and I try to focus on the warmth, the chatter. I walk to the edge of camp to grab more firewood, the beam of my flashlight cutting through the dark. The trees are dense here, swallowing light. I bend to pick up a branch, and for a split second, I think I see movement, something big, just beyond the beam. I freeze, heart pounding, but when I swing the light, there's nothing, just trees. I laugh at myself, feeling like a rookie. Still, my hand's on my knife as I head back. The others don't notice my absence, too caught up in their banter. Back at the fire, I toss the wood on, sparks flying. Theo's telling Gideon about some cryptozoology podcast, and I catch the word Bigfoot. I snort, cutting in. Don't waste your breath, kid. It's just stories to scare campers. Theo grins, undeterred, launching into a tale about a logger who vanished near here. Mara rolls her eyes, but Gideon's listening, wide-eyed. I lean back, trying to relax, but my eyes keep drifting to the darkness. The night's getting colder, and we're all bundled up now. Mara's packing away her notebook, Theo's yawning, and Gideon's back on his phone, even though it's useless. I'm about to suggest we turn in when I hear it, a low, guttural sound, not quite an animal, not quite anything else. It's faint, far off, but it cuts through the night like a blade. The others don't seem to notice, but my blood runs cold. I stay quiet, watching the woods, wondering if I'm losing it, or if something horror-filled is already watching us. Morning light filters through the pines, but I'm already up, coffee brewing over the fire. My eyes are gritty from barely sleeping. Every rustle last night had me gripping my knife. That guttural sound I heard didn't come again, but it's lodged in my brain like a splinter. Theo's snoring in his tent, Mara's jotting notes, and Gideon's poking at the fire, muttering about no Wi-Fi. I'm trying to act normal, but my gut's screaming this trip's gone sideways. I check the campsite, noticing our food bags torn open, cans scattered. Raccoons, maybe, but the claw marks are too big, too deep. It's disturbing, like something ripped into it with purpose. Theo finally stumbles out, hair a mess, joking about needing a bear to wake him up. I show him the food bag, keeping my voice steady. "This ain't raccoons," I say. He squints, then shrugs. "Big squirrel?" I don't laugh. Mara overhears, inspecting the bag with a frown. "These marks, they're not typical," she says, tracing the gashes. Gideon, curious now, snaps a photo, saying it's for his friends. I'm annoyed. Last thing we need is him posting this online if we get signal. I tell him to help clean up instead, but he rolls his eyes, dragging his feet. We decide to hike to Lake Jeanette's shore, a mile off, to clear our heads. I'm hoping daylight will shake this uneasy feeling. Theo's leading, cracking jokes about Bigfoot being a vegan, while Mara's pointing out plants, her voice sharp when Gideon lags behind. I'm at the rear, scanning the woods. The trail's familiar, one I patrolled years ago, but today it feels wrong, like the forest's holding its breath. I spot a broken branch, high up, way too high for a bear. My stomach twists, but I keep it to myself. No need to spook everyone yet. Halfway to the lake, Theo trips over a root, cursing loud enough to scare birds. He's fine, just embarrassed, but Mara snaps at him to watch his step. Tension's creeping in. We're all on edge, though nobody says it. Gideon's whining about his boots rubbing, and I'm regretting bringing a teenager. I try to lighten the mood, telling a story about a ranger who got stuck in mud here. Theo laughs, but Mara's distracted, staring at a patch of trampled ferns. "Something heavy came through," she mutters. I nod, my mind flashing to that hiker's story from years back, something massive in the trees. At the lake, the water's still, reflecting pines like a mirror. It's beautiful, but the silence is heavy, almost scary. Theo skips rocks, Gideon's sulking on a log, and Mara's collecting samples. I'm checking the map, planning our route back, when I notice footprints in the mud. Huge, human-like, but too wide, with deep claw marks. My heart skips. I kneel, pretending to tie my boot, so the others don't see. These aren't bear tracks. I've seen every print in this forest, and this is new. Disturbing. I decide not to tell them yet. Panic won't help. Theo suggests fishing, but our gear's back at camp, and Mara's against it, saying we shouldn't disturb the ecosystem. They bicker, and I'm barely listening, my eyes on the woods across the lake. Something moves, big, quick, gone before I can focus. I blink, telling myself it's a deer, but my hands are clammy. Gideon's whining again, saying he's hungry, and I snap at him to tough it out. Bad move. His face hardens, and Mara glares at me. I'm screwing this up, letting my nerves show. I need to keep it together. We head back, the trail feeling narrower, the trees closer. Theo's quiet now, sensing something's off. Mara's clutching her notebook like it's a shield, and Gideon's glued to her side, no longer complaining. I'm at the front, my knife in easy reach. The forest's too quiet. No birds, no squirrels. It's like the time I found a poacher's trap line. Everything alive had fled. My mind's racing, piecing together the torn bag, the footprints, that sound last night. I'm starting to think those Bigfoot stories aren't just campfire tales. Back at camp, the fire's out, and our tents are untouched, but there's a smell, rank, musky, like wet fur and rot. Theo gags, blaming a dead animal, but I know better. I check the perimeter, finding more broken branches, high up, like something circled us. Mara notices my tension, asking what's wrong. I lie, saying I'm just tired, but her eyes narrow. She's not buying it. Gideon's pale, clutching his phone like it'll save him. I want to tell them to pack up and leave, but we're hours from the truck, and night's coming fast. As we rebuild the fire, Theo tries to joke, but it falls flat. Mara's sketching those fern patterns, her hands shaking. I'm sharpening a stick, an old ranger trick, when I hear it again. That low, guttural rumble, closer now, from the trees. My blood freezes. The others hear it too, their faces pale in the firelight. Theo whispers, "What the hell was that?" I don't answer, my eyes locked on the dark, knowing whatever's out there is no myth. Something horror-filled is stalking us, and I'm not sure we're ready for what comes next. Firelight flickers as that guttural rumble echoes again, closer, shaking the air. My heart's pounding, and I'm on my feet, knife in hand, staring into the black beyond our camp. Theo's frozen, his joke dying on his lips. Mara's clutching Gideon, who's wide-eyed. Phone forgotten. "Leland, what is that?" she whispers, voice tight. I want to lie, say it's a bear, but the truth's clawing at me. Those footprints, the torn bag, the broken branches, it's no animal I know. Something horror-filled is out there, and it's not hiding anymore. I tell them to stay close, keep the fire high. My ranger training's kicking in, but fear's gnawing at my edges. Theo grabs a stick, holding it like a club, his bravado crumbling. "Is this Bigfoot?" he asks, half laughing, half panicked. I shoot him a look. Now's not the time. Mara's scanning the woods, her botanist brain trying to make sense of this. Gideon's shaking, muttering about wanting to go home. I'm kicking myself for bringing them here. I should have known better. Ranger stories about this forest weren't just gossip. Like that time a camper vanished near Lake Jeanette, leaving only a shredded tent. I thought it was wolves. Now, I'm not so sure. The air's thick with that musky stench, making my stomach churn. A branch snaps, loud, maybe 50 yards out. We all flinch. I swing my flashlight, the beam catching nothing but trees. "Stay by the fire," I hiss, stepping toward the sound. Mara grabs my arm. "Don't be stupid, Leland." Her eyes are fierce, but I see her fear. I shake her off. Someone's got to check. My boots crunch on pine needles, every step screaming at me to turn back. The dark's alive, oppressive, like it's pushing against me. Another snap, closer. My light catches something. Eyes, reflective, too high off the ground. They blink and vanish. My blood runs cold. This is scary, no denying it. Back at camp, Theo's trying to keep Gideon calm, telling him it's probably just a moose. It's a bad lie, and Gideon's not buying it. Mara's piling more wood on the fire, her hands trembling. I don't tell them about the eyes. Instead, I say we need to secure the camp. We drag our tents closer together, tying them to trees for stability. It's a flimsy defense, but it's something. The rumble comes again, a deep, bone-rattling growl from a different direction. It's circling us. Theo's voice cracks. It's playing with us, isn't it? I don't answer, but he's right. This thing's smart, and that's disturbing. Mara finds something by her tent, a tuft of coarse, dark hair caught on a branch. She holds it up, her face pale. "This isn't bear fur," she says, voice barely audible. I take it, the texture rough, smelling like that rank odor. My mind's racing. Bigfoot's a myth, right? But the evidence is piling up, and I'm out of excuses. Gideon's crying now, quiet sobs, and Mara pulls him close. Theo's pacing, muttering about horror movies where everyone dies. I snap at him to focus, but I'm just as rattled. I've faced bears, storms, even a forest fire, but this is different. We huddle by the fire, weapons in hand. My knife, Theo's stick, Mara's hatchet from her gear. Gideon's got nothing, just fear. I'm trying to plan, but the growls are sporadic, coming from all sides now. It's like being trapped in a nightmare, the kind where you know something's coming but can't see it. I remember a ranger buddy who swore he heard screams in these woods, human but not quite. We laughed it off. Now, I'm wondering if he was right. The fire's our only comfort, but it's burning low, and we're running out of wood. Theo suggests we make a run for the truck, but it's miles away, and night's too dangerous. Mara agrees, saying we're safer here till dawn. I'm not sure she's right, but splitting up's a death sentence. Another sound, rocks clattering, like something's throwing them. One lands near the fire, big as my fist. Gideon yelps, and Theo curses. I grab the rock, still warm, like it was held by something alive. My flashlight's shaking as I scan the trees, catching a shape, tall, broad, moving fast. It's gone before I can track it. My throat's dry, fear choking me. Mara's whispering to Gideon, trying to keep him calm, but her voice is strained. Theo's gripping his stick so tight his knuckles are white. I'm running through options, stay, fight, hide, but none feel right. The growls stop, and the silence is worse, like the calm before a storm. I'm checking the fire when something massive crashes through the brush, just outside our light. Twigs snap, leaves scatter, and that stench hits like a wave. Gideon screams, and Mara clamps a hand over his mouth. My heart's in my throat, knowing whatever's out there is done watching. I'm barking orders, stay low, don't move, when a tree shakes violently, 30 feet away. No wind, no reason, just raw power. Theo's breathing hard, Mara's gripping her hatchet, and Gideon's curled up, sobbing. I'm staring at the shaking tree, my flashlight useless against the dark. Something's clearly wrong, and it's not just in my head. This horror, is real, and it's closing in. I've got no plan, no way to fight what I can't understand, but I know one thing. We're not alone anymore, and the terror's just beginning. My flashlight's beam shakes as I shout, "Pack up now." That tree shaking was no accident. Whatever's out there wants us gone, or worse. Theo's stuffing gear into his bag, hands fumbling, while Mara's yanking Gideon to his feet. The fire's dying, and that musky stench chokes the air. I'm ripping down my tent, heart hammering, knowing we can't stay. The truck's miles away, but it's our only shot. A low growl rumbles, so close it vibrates my chest. This is horror, pure and raw, and we're in its crosshairs. I grab my knife, barking at Theo to douse the fire. We need to move, fast, before this thing stops toying with us. Mara's shoving essentials into her pack, her face pale but focused. Gideon's a mess, tears streaming, but he's moving. Theo trips over a root, cursing, and I haul him up. "Keep it together," I snap, though I'm barely holding on. The woods are alive with snaps and thuds, like something massive is pacing us. I've seen bears charge, but this is different, calculated, scary. I remember a ranger story about a hiker found torn apart near here, blamed on wolves. Wolves don't shake trees. We sling our packs on, and I take point, flashlight cutting through the dark, leading us toward the trail. The path's narrow, overgrown, and every step feels like a trap. Theo's behind me, breathing hard, Mara and Gideon at the rear. A branch snaps to our left, and I swing my light. Nothing, just shadows. My ranger instincts scream to keep moving, but fear's clawing at me. Gideon's whimpering, and Mara hisses at him to stay quiet. I'm kicking myself for not leaving yesterday. Those footprints, that smell. I ignored the signs, and now we're running for our lives. Another growl, closer, from the right. It's hurting us, and that's terrifying. We're half a mile in when Theo grabs my arm. "Look," he whispers, pointing. My light catches a shape, tall, hulking, slipping behind a tree. Too big for a man, too fast for a bear. My stomach drops. "Keep moving," I say, voice low, but my hands are shaking. Mara's muttering about survival stats, like it'll help. Gideon's tripping over roots, slowing us down. I want to yell at him, but he's just a kid, scared out of his mind. The air's heavy, like the forest itself is against us, and every step feels like a gamble. A rock crashes through the brush, landing 10 feet ahead. Then another, bigger, smashing a sapling. Gideon screams, and Mara clamps his mouth shut. It's trying to scare us, I say, but I'm not sure who I'm convincing. Theo's gripping his stick, useless against whatever this is. I'm thinking of horror movies where the monster picks off stragglers. We're not splitting up, no way. I push us faster, thorns tearing at my jacket. The trail's a blur, my flashlight bouncing, catching glimpses of movement. Eyes, maybe, or just my mind breaking. We hit a clearing, moonlight spilling over us, and for a second, I think we're safe. Then a bellow, deep and guttural, shakes the ground. It's behind us, close. I spin, light catching a silhouette. Massive, upright, arms like tree trunks. Bigfoot, Sasquatch, whatever, it's real and it's coming. "Run," I yell, shoving Theo forward. Mara's dragging Gideon, who's sobbing, legs barely working. My lungs burn, but I'm not stopping. The truck's our lifeline, and I'll be damned if this thing gets us. The trail twists, and I nearly lose my footing in the mud. Theo's shouting about a shortcut, but I shut him down, stick to what I know. Mara's panting, Gideon's dead weight now, and I'm wondering if we'll make it. Another rock flies, grazing my shoulder, pain flaring. It's not just scaring us anymore, it's hunting. I've faced danger as a ranger, but this is life and death, no question. The growls are constant now, echoing from all sides, like it's everywhere. My flashlight flickers, and I curse, slamming it against my palm. We're nearing the trailhead, maybe a mile from the truck, when the ground shakes. Trees sway, and a roar tears through the night, so loud my ears ring. I glance back. Nothing, but the dark's alive, pulsing with malice. Theo's tripping, Mara's screaming at Gideon to move, and I'm praying we don't hit a dead end. My knife's useless, but I grip it anyway, ready to fight if it comes to that. The forest feels like a cage, and we're the prey, running blind from a horror we can't outrun. I'm shouting directions, voice hoarse, when something slams into a tree ahead, bark exploding. It's blocking our path, forcing us off the trail. I veer right, into thicker woods, no choice. Theo's cursing, Mara's gasping, and Gideon's barely conscious, dragged by his mom. The truck's close, I can feel it, but so is this thing. Every step's a gamble, every shadow a threat. We're not escaping yet. This is survival, and the danger's not letting up. My heart's pounding, knowing one wrong move could end us all. Branches claw my face as we crash through the underbrush, the truck's outline barely visible through the trees. My flashlight's dead now, and moonlight's all we've got. Theo's ahead, yelling he sees the road, but I'm not celebrating yet. That thing's still out there, its growls softer but closer, like it's stalking, waiting. Mara's dragging Gideon, who's limp, muttering about monsters. I'm behind, knife out, ready to buy them time if it charges. This horror's not done with us, and I'm cursing myself for coming back to this forest. Retirement was supposed to be peaceful, not a death trap. Theo reaches the truck, fumbling with the keys, his hands shaking so bad he drops them. Come on, I yell, shoving Mara and Gideon toward the cab. The air's thick with that rank stench, and a low rumble vibrates the ground. It's near, too near. I'm scanning the dark, seeing nothing but feeling everything. Eyes on us, heavy, hungry. I remember a ranger who swore he fought off a bear with a tire iron. I've got no tire iron, just a knife and a prayer. Theo's got the door open, Mara's pushing Gideon inside, and I'm almost there. I'm at the truck when I hear it. A scream, raw, human. It's Mara. I spin, heart stopping. She's on the ground, tripped, her ankle twisted. Gideon's screaming from the cab. Theo's frozen, keys in hand. I run back, grabbing her arm, but the woods explode. A shape, massive, dark, faster than anything natural, bursts from the trees. It's Bigfoot, no question, towering over us, eyes glinting like wet stones. My knife's up, but it's like waving a toothpick at a tank. This is scary, soul-crushing, and I know we're out of time. Get to the truck, I shout, hauling Mara up. She's limping, pain etched on her face, but she's moving. Theo's yelling, engine roaring to life. The creature roars, a sound that shakes my bones, and swipes, missing us by inches. I feel the air shift, smell its rank fur. I'm pushing Mara ahead, but she's slow, too slow. Gideon's sobbing, banging on the window. I glance back. The thing's pacing, not chasing, like it knows we're trapped. That's when I make the mistake, the deadly one. I tell Theo to start driving, thinking we'll jump in as he moves. Bad call. Mara's not fast enough, and I'm not leaving her. The truck lurches forward, Theo panicking, and we're still 10 feet away. The creature charges, a blur of muscle and fury. I shove Mara toward the truck, screaming for Theo to stop, but he's too scared, flooring it. Mara's almost there when the thing grabs her, claws ripping into her shoulder. She screams, blood soaking her jacket, and I'm swinging my knife, useless, shouting her name. Mara's yanked back, her eyes locked on mine, full of terror and something worse, resignation. I'm lunging, stabbing at the creature, but it's like hitting stone. It roars, tossing her like a rag doll into the dark. Gideon's screams pierce the air as Theo slams the brakes. Too late. I'm running after her, but the thing's gone, dragging her into the woods. My voice cracks, calling her name, but there's only silence, that horrible, empty silence. I'm on my knees, blood on my hands. Mara's, not mine. Theo's out of the truck, sobbing, saying he didn't mean to leave her. Gideon's curled up in the cab, broken. I'm numb, staring at the trees where she vanished. I should have stayed at camp, fought, anything but this. My mistake cost Mara her life, and the tragedy's sinking in like a blade. The creature's growls fade, but I know it's not gone. It's watching, waiting. We pile into the truck, Gideon whimpering, Theo shaking. I drive, eyes burning, knowing this horror's not over. The road's a blur, my mind replaying Mara's scream, her blood on the ground. I'm supposed to protect people, that's what rangers do. But I failed, and now Mara's gone, maybe dead, maybe worse. Gideon's whispering her name, and Theo's muttering apologies. I want to tell them it's not their fault, but the words won't come. The forest looms around us, dark, endless, hiding that thing. I'm gripping the wheel, knowing we escaped, but at what cost? This was no camping trip, It was a nightmare, and I led us straight into it. We hit the highway, lights flickering in the distance, but safety feels like a lie. I'm thinking of the ranger stories, the ones I laughed off. Hikers vanishing, screams in the night. They were warnings, and I ignored them. Mara's face haunts me, her blood on my hands a permanent stain. Gideon's silent now, Theo's staring out the window, and I'm driving into the dawn, carrying a tragedy that'll never leave us. The forest's behind, but its horrors in me, in all of us, forever. My name is Vincent Mercer, 49 years old, and I've spent the last 23 years of my life as a park ranger at Itasca State Park in northern Minnesota. These days, I live in Duluth, where the constant view of Lake Superior reminds me daily of how small we humans really are compared to nature's raw power. After a career spent watching over Minnesota's oldest state park and the headwaters of the Mississippi River, I thought retirement would be peaceful. My small apartment filled with books on local folklore and my Labrador, Scout, seemed like all the company I needed after years of dealing with tourists and wildlife emergencies. The nightmare started 3 months after I left the service. Always the same. I'd be standing at Itasca's Preacher's Grove, surrounded by those ancient red pines, when the ground beneath me would turn to liquid, pulling me down into inky blackness. I'd wake gasping, sheets soaked with sweat, the phantom sensation of cold mud filling my lungs lingering for hours afterward. My therapist called it adjustment disorder, the psychological backlash of leaving a job that had defined me for decades. I wasn't convinced. The call from Nora Blackwood didn't help my state of mind. We'd worked together for 15 years before she became head ranger at Itasca. Her voice on the phone carried an edge I recognized from our worst emergencies, controlled panic wrapped in professional calm. 3 drownings in the last month. Vince, she said without preamble. All in places where the water shouldn't be more than knee-deep. The rational part of my brain suggested strong currents, hidden sinkholes, or simple accidents. The part that remembered old Ojibwe warnings whispered something far more disturbing. I found myself digging through my collection of regional mythology books that evening, focusing on water spirits and lake monsters. Minnesota's 10,000 lakes had generated countless legends over centuries, stories told by indigenous tribes, Scandinavian settlers, and lumber camp workers to explain the inexplicable. Most centered around creatures lurking beneath seemingly peaceful waters, entities that could create whirlpools or drag unwary swimmers to watery graves. Folklore dismissed as superstition by modern science, yet the drowning statistics told a different story. After a restless night punctuated by vivid dreams of dark water, I packed my camping gear into my truck. Scout jumped in enthusiastically, unaware of my growing apprehension. I told myself this trip was just to reconnect with old colleagues, maybe offer insights from my years of experience. The sleeping bag, emergency supplies, an old service revolver I tucked beneath the seat suggested my subconscious had other expectations. The drive northwest from Duluth took nearly 4 hours, giving me too much time with thoughts of what might await in a park I once believed I knew intimately. Itasca greeted me with familiar beauty that belied the circumstances of my return. Early autumn had painted the maples fiery red, contrasting sharply with the dark green of ancient white pines. Tourists clustered around the Mississippi headwaters, snapping photos as they crossed the iconic stones marking the mighty river's humble beginning. None seemed aware of the recent tragedies or the growing unease among park staff. Nora met me at the ranger station, lines around her eyes deeper than I remembered, her handshake just a bit too firm, seeking reassurance as much as offering greeting. The incident reports made for disturbing reading. All 3 victims had been experienced outdoor enthusiasts, not careless waders or intoxicated swimmers. Each had disappeared in different locations around the park's many lakes and ponds. When recovered, the bodies showed no signs of struggle, no injuries consistent with hitting underwater obstacles. Most disturbing were the expressions frozen on their faces, not panic or fear, but a strange serenity, as if they had willingly embraced the water closing over them. Medical examiners had found their lungs filled not just with lake water, but with a dark, mud-like substance that defied standard classification. We've closed the swimming areas, restricted boating, doubled patrols, Nora explained as we walked the shore of Lake Itasca. The official statement mentions dangerous underwater currents, but that's nonsense, and we both know it. She stopped, looking out over the deceptively peaceful water. The thing is, Vince, it's not just the drownings. The water levels are rising in all the lakes, even with no rainfall. Test samples show abnormal microbial activity. And the sounds. She trailed off, visibly uncomfortable. Night staff have reported voices coming from the water, calling staff members by name. A chill ran through me that had nothing to do with the autumn breeze. I'd heard similar stories my first year as a ranger here, dismissed as campfire tales meant to frighten rookies. As twilight descended over the park, Nora introduced me to the current ranger team. Most faces new except for grizzled old Marcus Thompson, who'd been my mentor decades ago. The tension in the room was palpable as they shared details too strange for official reports. Watches stopping when near the water, compasses spinning wildly near certain lakes, cameras malfunctioning, with unexplainable dark splotches appearing in photos of water surfaces. Most troubling were accounts from the Ojibwe elders who'd recently visited, warning that the sleeping one beneath was awakening after centuries of dormancy. They'd performed ceremonies along the shorelines before departing in evident haste, refusing to stay after sunset. The decision to camp within the park rather than take lodging in the staff quarters wasn't well received. No one's sleeping near water right now, Vince, Marcus cautioned, his weathered face somber in the fluorescent light of the ranger station. I explained my need to experience the park at night firsthand, choosing a small rise overlooking Elk Lake. High enough ground to feel secure, close enough to observe. The younger rangers exchanged glances that suggested I was either brave or foolish. Perhaps both. Nora reluctantly provided a radio with the emergency channel preset, extracting a promise to check in hourly until dawn. Setting up camp in fading light stirred muscle memories from countless patrols. Scouts circled restlessly as I secured the tent, his usual playfulness replaced by alertness I recognized from encounters with predators. The air felt unusually dense, carrying scents of pine, decaying leaves, and something else, an organic, almost metallic odor reminiscent of lake bottom mud exposed to air. By the time I'd established a small fire, full darkness had descended, bringing unnatural silence. No frogs chorused from the lakeshore. No owls called from the surrounding forest. Even insects seemed to have abandoned the area near the water. My first indication that something was fundamentally wrong came during my 10 p.m. radio check. Static overwhelmed Nora's response, though we were well within range. The interference pulsed rhythmically, almost like a heartbeat, growing stronger when I faced the lake. Scout whined softly, pressing against my leg as his eyes tracked something moving along the shoreline, something I couldn't see in the darkness. The hairs on my arms stood erect despite the warmth of my jacket. Years of wilderness experience had taught me to recognize when I was being watched. Sleep came in broken fragments, disrupted by Scout's periodic growls and my own hypervigilance. Near midnight, I startled fully awake at a sound difficult to categorize, something between liquid sloshing and wet footsteps approaching from the direction of Elk Lake. I reached for my flashlight but hesitated before switching it on, primitive instinct warning against revealing my position. The footsteps stopped approximately 20 yards from my tent. Scout's low warning growl vibrated against my side, but he made no move to investigate. Whatever waited out there, my dog wanted no part of it. A voice drifted through the darkness, soft, melodic, and disturbingly familiar. "Vincent," it called, my name extended into unnatural syllables. "We've missed you." The voice belonged to Teresa Wilkins, a fellow ranger who had drowned during my 3rd year at Itasca. The rational part of my brain registered this as impossible, but cold terror flooded my system nonetheless. Scout's growl deepened as the sound of water dripping onto leaves created a syncopated rhythm just outside the tent's thin walls. "The water's perfect tonight," Teresa's voice continued. "Come see what we've discovered down below." Morning light revealed muddy footprints surrounding my campsite, barefoot, human-sized, but with oddly elongated toes and deep impressions suggesting unusual weight. They formed a perfect circle around my tent, never approaching closer than 15 feet, as if constrained by some invisible boundary. Most disturbing was their origin and destination, tracks leading directly into Elk Lake, emerging wet and gradually drying as they circled my position before returning to the water. Park forensics would later confirm the partial prints I photographed contained no recognizable DNA, but high concentrations of an unidentified black algae, typically found only in extreme depths. At the ranger station, I found the team gathered around satellite imagery showing alarming changes. Lakes throughout the park had expanded overnight, shorelines encroaching on previously dry land. Groundwater readings showed pressure changes consistent with massive underwater displacement. Something was literally pushing water upward from deep below the surface. Environmental sensors detected unprecedented concentrations of methane and hydrogen sulfide, gases typically associated with decomposition and underwater volcanic activity. The water composition is changing, explained Rita Chun, the park's environmental scientist. It's becoming more like primordial soup than freshwater. The debate over closing the park entirely grew heated. Tourism revenues sustained the local economy, and without concrete evidence of an identifiable threat, state authorities resisted drastic measures. 3 deaths isn't enough, Nora said bitterly, hanging up after another frustrating call with her superiors. They want scientific explanations, not folklore about water spirits. I understood bureaucratic skepticism all too well from my years in service, but the evidence accumulating around us defied conventional explanation. Something ancient was stirring beneath Minnesota's iconic lakes, something that had coexisted with humans primarily through mutual avoidance, until now. By mid-afternoon, reports filtered in of strange sightings throughout the park, dark shapes moving beneath water surfaces, unexplained ripples against prevailing currents, and most alarmingly, visitors claiming to have seen drowned family members beckoning from just offshore. 2 separate incidents of children walking in trance toward deep water had been narrowly averted by alert parents. The pattern was unmistakable to anyone familiar with worldwide folklore. These were classic behaviors attributed to water spirits luring victims to watery graves, appearing in forms calculated to lower human defenses. The turning point came during a shoreline patrol with Marcus. We'd been documenting water level changes along Lake Itasca's northern shore when a sudden fog rolled across the surface, too localized and too dense to be natural. Within seconds, visibility dropped to mere feet, and the temperature plummeted despite the warm autumn day. Through swirling mist, dark figures moved at the water's edge, humanoid shapes composed of what appeared to be animate mud and lake detritus, watching us with hollow depressions where eyes should be. Marcus raised his camera with shaking hands, but before he could capture evidence, the figures melted back into the water, leaving only ripples and the lingering smell of decay. Manitou, Marcus whispered, using the Ojibwe term for spirit beings. The elders warned about this decades ago, something sleeping in the deepest parts of the lakes, something that wakes periodically to feed. His voice carried the weight of old knowledge, stories passed down through generations of park stewards, both indigenous and colonial. They said human development was drawing too close, that our chemicals and noise would eventually disturb what should remain dormant. The fog retreated as suddenly as it had appeared, but the sense of malevolent presence lingered like a physical weight. Back at headquarters, chaos erupted as reports flooded in from across the park. Multiple visitors had gone missing in separate incidents, all near water. Ranger patrols had discovered abandoned vehicles, picnic sites with meals half-eaten, and in one case, a line of footprints leading directly into a pond that simply stopped at the water's edge. Search and rescue operations mobilized quickly, but team leaders reported disorientation when approaching specific water bodies, equipment malfunctions, compass failures, and team members experiencing overwhelming urges to enter the water despite training and awareness of the danger. As dusk approached, bringing early autumn darkness, Nora made the executive decision to evacuate all visitors from the park. Procedure be damned. I'll take responsibility with the state, she announced grimly, initiating emergency protocols. Rangers paired up to sweep campgrounds and day-use areas, struggling against bizarre technical failures as radios cut out near water and vehicle engines mysteriously died when driven along certain shoreline roads. Scout and I joined the evacuation effort, using his keen senses to locate straggling hikers in increasingly foggy conditions. With each passing hour, I couldn't shake the growing certainty that we weren't simply contending with a natural phenomenon. We were dealing with something intelligent and increasingly hostile. Night fell with unnatural swiftness, darkness seeming to ooze from the lakes rather than descend from the sky. The evacuation had encountered resistance, not just from stubborn tourists, but from park infrastructure itself. Roads that had existed for decades suddenly terminated in swampy ground that hadn't been there that morning. Trail markers relocated overnight, leading confused hikers in circles or toward water rather than safety. Nature itself seemed to be conspiring against our efforts, the very landscape reconfiguring to serve some incomprehensible purpose. The emergency command center established in the main visitor building hummed with controlled panic. Maps spread across tables showed expanding blue areas where water now covered what had been dry land hours earlier. The park's topography was literally changing before our eyes. Lakes connecting via newly formed channels, streams reversing direction to flow inland rather than toward the Mississippi. Most disturbing were thermal imaging scans showing cold spots moving systematically through the park, entity-sized anomalies that avoided ranger patrols with evident purpose. "We've got 37 confirmed missing," Nora reported grimly, marking locations on the central map. The pattern was unmistakable. Disappearances clustered around the oldest, deepest bodies of water, particularly those mentioned in Ojibwe legends. Search teams report hearing voices in the fog, family members, friends, calling them toward the water. Her expression hardened. 2 rangers didn't return from the North Shore sweep. Their radios went silent simultaneously at 7:18 p.m. The unspoken implication hung heavy. Experienced professionals were succumbing to whatever influence pervaded the park. Debate over our next actions fractured along predictable lines. Younger staff advocated technological solutions: drones, sonar sweeps, chemical analysis of water samples. Veterans like Marcus proposed more traditional approaches. The elders always managed to negotiate peaceful coexistence, he insisted. There are offerings, rituals, boundaries that used to be respected. My own experience straddled both worlds, recognizing the value of modern resources while respecting indigenous knowledge accumulated over centuries of cohabitation with forces science barely acknowledged. The decision to split our dwindling resources came reluctantly. Research teams would continue gathering data while I volunteered to accompany Marcus on what he termed a diplomatic mission to the center of Lake Itasca. Traditional knowledge indicated that entity manifestations followed patterns, strengthening with darkness, peaking at midnight, receding temporarily before dawn. Our window for approach would be the pre-dawn hours when influence was theoretically weakest. Scout would remain at command center, his agitation near water making him a liability for this particular task. Equipment preparation revealed how thin our understanding stretched. What tools does one bring to confront a water entity? Marcus gathered traditional items, tobacco ties, sweetgrass, items representing balanced elements. I focused on practical survival gear, emergency flotation devices, waterproof lights, communications equipment likely to fail, but necessary regardless. The contradiction of our approaches wasn't lost on me. Modern ranger and traditional knowledge keeper preparing for the same encounter with entirely different tool sets. The hours before our departure passed with excruciating slowness. Reports continued flowing in, water levels rising another 8 inches across all park lakes. 3 more evacuation teams missing, communication increasingly unreliable. Most concerning were eyewitness accounts from rangers who'd glimpsed what waited in the water. Humanoid figures composed of lake mud and organic matter, moving with unsettling coordination along shorelines, leaving trails of black slime that killed vegetation within hours of contact. The entities were becoming bolder, appearing in groups rather than singly, venturing farther onto land with each sighting. At 3 a.m., we launched our small boat into fog-shrouded Lake Itasca. Marcus sat in the bow, gray hair gleaming faintly in diffused moonlight, shoulders draped with a traditional blanket despite the unseasonable warmth. I managed the outboard motor, keeping speed deliberately slow to minimize noise and disturbance. The fog parted occasionally, revealing star reflections on water so still it resembled black glass. The silence pressed against my eardrums. No insects, no night birds, not even the typical lapping of wavelets against our hull. The lake seemed to be holding its breath. Halfway to our destination, a small island marking the deepest point of the lake, our engine died. No sputtering, no warning, simply complete mechanical failure. The sudden silence amplified other sounds. Water dripping from our suspended oars, Marcus's measured breathing, and something else, a gentle lapping against our hull, rhythmic as a heartbeat. I peered over the side and immediately recoiled. The water around our boat wasn't simply dark. It was actively absorbing the beam from my flashlight, swallowing illumination as if composed of liquid shadow. "It knows we're here," Marcus whispered, his voice startlingly loud in the unnatural quiet. He began a soft chant in Ojibwe, words I recognized from ceremonies I'd witnessed but never fully understood. The rhythmic language seemed to stabilize something in our immediate environment. The oppressive pressure eased slightly, fog thinning enough to reveal our position approximately 30 yards from the island. I reached for the oars, but Marcus shook his head sharply. "We wait now? We've entered its domain. Protocol must be observed." What emerged from the depths beside our boat defied rational categorization. Initially appearing as a swirling vortex of darker water, it gradually coalesced into a vaguely humanoid upper body rising nearly 6 feet above the surface. No distinct facial features disturbed its mud-slick head, but deep impressions suggested eyes and a mouth formed more for appearance than function. Most disturbing was its evident composition. Lake bottom sediment interwoven with preserved organic matter I belatedly recognized as fragments of human remains. Fingers, small bones, and what appeared to be preserved tissue created a grotesque mosaic throughout its form. Nibi-Manitou, Marcus acknowledged formally, using the Ojibwe term for water spirit. "We come with respect, seeking to understand the discord between our peoples." The entity remained motionless, water continually flowing through its form while maintaining its general shape. When it responded, the sound came not from its approximation of a mouth, but seemed to emanate from the lake itself. A deep vibration carrying meaning that bypassed my ears and registered directly in my mind. Boundaries broken, sleep disturbed, balance lost. The concepts crashed against my consciousness with physical force, carrying emotional imprints of ancient rage and more recent pain. Images flooded my mind, centuries of undisturbed existence, recent decades of chemical runoff, increasing boat traffic, shoreline development, disturbing underwater currents. Most visceral was the entity's experience of human trash descending through its domain. Plastic gradually disintegrating into microscopic particles now embedded in every aspect of lake life, including the entity itself. Marcus continued the dialogue in formal Ojibwe, but I grasped only fragments of the exchange. The entity's responses grew increasingly agitated, water around our boat beginning to swirl and bubble with unnatural vigor. Multiple smaller figures began emerging around us, similar compositions of mud and organic matter, but sized like children, reaching elongated fingers toward our hull. The temperature plummeted as fog reformed, thicker than before, limiting visibility to the immediate area around our boat, now surrounded by at least a dozen entities. "It's not negotiating," Marcus finally whispered, switching to English. "It's beyond that point. The balance is too far gone." Real fear crept into his voice for the first time. "It's showing us what comes next." The main entity suddenly expanded, towering nearly 15 feet above the water, and from its center emerged a partially preserved human face. One of the missing rangers, eyes vacant but mouth moving in unison with the telepathic voice now reverberating through my skull. "Your kind joins with water now. All returns to source." The horrifying implication became immediately clear. The entities weren't simply drowning victims. They were incorporating them, using human remains as components in their expanding forms. The missing visitors and rangers weren't dead in any conventional sense. They had been absorbed, their consciousness fragments now part of the collective entity that considered itself the rightful guardian of all water in the region. Our boat lurched violently as something massive displaced water beneath us. The entity before us seemed to smile, a terrible stretching of its approximated features, as dozens of muddy hands reached from the water on all sides. Marcus frantically completed what appeared to be a protective ritual, scattering specific materials across the water's surface. The effect was instantaneous. The smaller entities recoiled briefly, creating a momentary clearing around our vessel. "Row," he shouted, abandoning ceremony for survival. "Head for the island. They can't follow onto old ground." I dug the oars into suddenly resistant water, each stroke feeling like pulling through thick mud rather than liquid. The island loomed just 20 yards away now, its shoreline visibly shrinking as water levels continued rising around it. Behind us, the main entity let out a sound that vibrated through bone and tissue, part whale song, part human scream, a summoning that brought dozens more shapes surging from the depths. Our small boat lurched forward with agonizing slowness, water now seeming to possess the consistency of gelatin actively working against our escape. The true horror of what we faced revealed itself in those desperate moments. Not simply entities living within water, but water itself possessing consciousness and purpose, every molecule potentially part of the collective entity, now focused on preventing our escape. Marcus continued his protective chants with increasing urgency as I fought for each foot of progress toward the island. Just yards from shore, something massive collided with our hull from below, nearly capsizing us. Water surged over the sides, impossibly cold and seeming to move with deliberate purpose as it coalesced around our ankles, creeping upward with unnatural surface tension. Our salvation came in a form neither of us expected. Dawn breaking suddenly over the eastern shore, rays of direct sunlight cutting through fog with surprising effectiveness. The entities surrounding our boat hissed and churned as light touched their forms, not dissolving but retreating to deeper water. With one final, desperate lunge, I drove the boat onto the island's shrinking beach, both of us scrambling onto relatively dry land as entities clutched at the vessel's stern, dragging it back toward the lake with evident purpose. Standing on the island's highest point, surrounded by encroaching water on all sides, we finally confronted the full scope of our situation. The entity wasn't simply localized to Lake Itasca. It had spread through newly formed channels to every body of water in the park. The radios remained uselessly silent. The island continued shrinking as water levels rose, and dark shapes circled continuously just offshore, waiting for night to fall once more. We had not escaped. We had merely prolonged the inevitable confrontation. Whatever ancient harmony had existed between humans and these water guardians had fractured beyond Marcus's ability to repair through traditional means. We were witnessing the beginning of what might well become a war for control of Minnesota's most precious natural resource, a war waged by an entity to whom time meant nothing and human life represented mere building material. The island shrunk with alarming speed as morning progressed. What had been nearly an acre of relatively high ground at dawn had diminished to roughly half that size by noon, the water advancing with unnatural purpose rather than the random lapping of wind-driven waves. Marcus and I retreated to the central knoll where a single ancient oak stood like a last sentinel, its roots partially exposed by the encroaching lake. From this vantage point, the transformation of Itasca spread before us in horrifying panorama, water levels visibly rising across the entire visible landscape, connecting previously separate ponds and lakes into an expanding network like a living circulatory system. "They're reclaiming it all," Marcus murmured, his weathered face drawn with exhaustion after our night's ordeal. "Everything the glaciers carved out, everything water once filled before human development." The implications staggered me. Thousands of acres, countless homes and businesses, entire communities potentially threatened if this phenomenon continued expanding beyond park boundaries. Most concerning was the intelligence directing it, not mindless natural forces, but sentient purpose we'd witnessed firsthand, an ancient consciousness with evident grievances against human encroachment. Our island sanctuary offered temporary reprieve, but rapidly diminishing options. The boat had been dragged back into deeper water, now floating unoccupied 20 yards offshore like bait in a trap. The radios remained useless, and my cell phone showed no signal despite its waterproof case having protected it through the night's events. Attempting to swim to the mainland seemed suicidal given what we'd witnessed. Physical survival required immediate practical solutions, but longer-term resolution demanded understanding what we faced: entity, spirit, or some hybrid life form science had yet to categorize. The legends call them the original keepers, Marcus explained as we conducted inventory of our limited supplies. Born when the world was mostly water, guardians of the boundary between elements. Not malevolent by nature, but territorial and ancient beyond human comprehension. He paused, watching dark shapes moving beneath the surface around our shrinking refuge. The elders said they mostly sleep, awakening only when balance shifts too dramatically. They've been documented in Ojibwe stories for centuries, but never this aggressive, never this coordinated. Midday brought unexpected development. A park helicopter appearing above the tree line, apparently searching grid patterns across the expanding water bodies. We frantically signaled with Marcus's reflective emergency blanket, relief flooding through me as the craft altered course toward our position. That relief evaporated as the helicopter approached and water around our island erupted skyward, not as random splashes, but as coordinated tendrils reaching nearly 30 feet upward, forcing the pilot to veer sharply away to avoid contact. 3 separate attempt approaches yielded the same response, the entities clearly demonstrating control over their environment, extending well above the water's surface. The helicopter eventually retreated toward park headquarters, unable to risk closer approach. Our brief connection with rescue forces revealed something critical. However, Nora and the command team knew our location and condition. Whether they could devise extraction methods capable of countering the entity's capabilities remained the pressing question. As afternoon shadows lengthened, our island continued its inexorable shrinkage, water now reaching the lower branches of the oak. Beneath the surface, dark shapes maintained constant vigil, occasionally allowing glimpses of partially formed faces, some recognizably human, others composed of elements so ancient they predated human presence in these lands. The strategic standoff broke unexpectedly at 4:17 p.m. when a distant rumble preceded a visible wave approaching from the direction of park headquarters. Not water-driven, but an actual shock wave traveling across the lake surface. The entities reacted immediately, water around our island churning violently as they retreated toward the disturbance. Through my binoculars, I glimpsed the cause. Engineers had dynamited one of the park's smaller dams, directing water flow away from our position while creating a diversionary crisis the entities apparently felt compelled to address. Now, Marcus shouted, recognizing our narrow window of opportunity. The water level around our island had dropped nearly 2 feet as the entities diverted their control toward the dam breach. A tenuous land bridge had emerged connecting to a peninsula of higher ground leading ultimately toward the mainland. With no time for debate or equipment gathering, we sprinted across the exposed muddy ground, each step sinking ankle-deep into waterlogged soil still pulsing with unnatural energy. Behind us, awareness of our escape rippled through the water, literally, as concentric circles spread outward from multiple points, converging toward our position with evident purpose. The race across exposed lake bottom became a nightmare of sucking mud and disorienting fog that seemed to generate spontaneously around us. Each labored step required maximum effort, the ground itself seeming to resist our passage. Halfway to the peninsula, Marcus stumbled, sinking knee-deep into what appeared solid ground moments before. I hauled him upward with desperate strength, both of us now covered in black mud that clung with almost sentient persistence, growing heavier rather than drying as we moved. The entities had weaponized the very earth beneath our feet, saturating it with controlled water content to impede our progress. Water began reclaiming the exposed pathway behind us, not as normal lake flow, but as a deliberate pursuer gaining speed with each passing second. The peninsula ahead remained our only viable destination, a ridge of glacial moraine rising nearly 15 feet above water level, offering temporary refuge, but ultimately connecting to mainland forest if we could reach it before being overtaken. My lungs burned with exertion, each breath drawing in mist that seemed to condense inside my chest, making respiration increasingly laborious. Marcus fared worse, decades my senior, and slowing visibly as the pursuing water closed the gap. We reached the peninsula's base as water swirled around our calves, its touch bringing unnatural cold that numbed flesh on contact. Something solid brushed against my leg beneath the surface. Not driftwood or vegetation, but purposeful contact that left muddy handprints visible on my pants as I scrambled up the incline. Marcus followed more slowly, his movements growing sluggish as multiple appendages now visibly clutched at his lower body, pulling downward with evident purpose. I turned back, gripping his outstretched hand as more entities emerged behind him. Mud-sculpted figures with vaguely human proportions rising from the water like nightmarish parodies of evolution's transition from sea to land. The entities' limitations became apparent as we gained higher ground. Their forms grew less stable with distance from their source water, outer layers crumbling as they pursued us up the ridge. This weakness proved temporary, however, as the water level itself continued rising with unnatural speed, literally bringing their environment with them as they advanced. Reaching the peninsula's crest brought momentary advantage. Clear sightlines across terrain not yet submerged, including a distant emergency vehicle light flashing at a park access road approximately 1 mile distant. "They're flooding the access roads," Marcus gasped, pointing toward visible water now covering what had been dry forest floor that morning, cutting off escape routes systematically. The strategic intelligence behind the water's movement became undeniable. Not random rising, but purposeful isolation of high-ground refuges, creating islands that could be gradually reduced through continued water manipulation. The entities weren't simply reacting to our presence. They were implementing a coordinated reclamation of territory with methodical precision. Our path forward presented terrible choices. Attempt crossing increasingly waterlogged forest floor where entities could manifest anywhere moisture existed, or follow higher ground along the peninsula's spine despite its winding route extending our journey significantly. Marcus's condition forced the decision. His breathing had grown labored, exposure to the entity's touch leaving visible black discoloration spreading slowly up his legs like advancing frostbite. The more direct route through lower terrain might hasten our progress, but increase his vulnerability to whatever progressive effect now visibly claimed his extremities. We chose the high ground route, moving as rapidly as Marcus's deteriorating condition permitted. Behind us, a procession of entities maintained steady pursuit, no longer rushing but advancing with inexorable patience, water rising to accommodate their progress. Their tactics had shifted from immediate capture to gradual herding, driving us towards some unknown destination rather than overtaking us directly. This realization brought little comfort as afternoon light waned and fog thickened around us, visibility reducing to mere yards despite the relatively open terrain. The first human corpse appeared approximately halfway along our route, a park visitor judging by the casual clothing, face down in shallow water accumulating between two ridgelines. I moved to check for signs of life, but Marcus held me back with surprising strength. "Don't touch it," he warned hoarsely. "Look closer." Reluctantly, I observed what I'd initially missed, the body's unnatural positioning, limbs arranged too symmetrically, skin tone too uniform despite exposure. Not a victim, but a construct. Lake bottom material shaped into human form, a lure designed to draw us into contact. As if confirming this assessment, the corpse suddenly rotated its head 180 degrees to face us directly, revealing not a human countenance, but a smooth mud surface with rudimentary depressions suggesting facial features. The psychological warfare escalated as we proceeded, false rescue workers, calling our names from just beyond visual range in fog. Perfect imitations of colleagues' voices offering help if we just wade through this shallow section. Most disturbing were the increasingly sophisticated mimicries appearing in our path. Mud constructs now wearing waterlogged fragments of actual ranger uniforms, their movements becoming more convincingly human with each new iteration. The entities were learning, adapting, improving their lures through evident trial and error. What might have been primitive predation techniques had evolved into psychological warfare specifically targeted to human responders. Marcus collapsed a quarter-mile from the access road, his legs no longer supporting weight as the black discoloration reached mid-thigh. "Chemical exchange," he gasped, attempting to explain what overtook him. "They're converting tissue, integrating." His scientific detachment faltered as pain visibly coursed through him, face contorting as he fought whatever process had begun during our water crossing. The entities had maintained consistent distance during our flight, neither gaining nor falling behind, watching, waiting for precisely this moment when our progress would naturally halt due to his condition. With darkness approaching and Marcus unable to continue, I faced impossible choices. Attempting to carry him would slow us to the point of certain capture. Continuing alone violated every principle of my ranger training. Before I could articulate either option, Marcus removed his ceremonial pouch and pressed it firmly into my hand. "Get to headquarters," he ordered through gritted teeth. "Tell them what we learned. This isn't just Itasca, it's connecting to all watershed systems." His eyes cleared briefly, professional assessment overriding personal pain. "They're establishing a network. Every lake, every river, all connected through groundwater. They're waking up everywhere." The full implications hit with devastating clarity. Minnesota's identity as land of 10,000 lakes suddenly transformed from tourism slogan to strategic vulnerability. If entities controlled interconnected water systems throughout the state, coordination between them could threaten population centers, infrastructure, transportation networks, the entire region's habitability. Marcus had recognized the pattern while I'd focused on immediate survival. His next words confirmed my darkest fears. The Mississippi headwaters were just the beginning. Control those. You control everything downstream eventually. Before I could protest or propose alternatives, Marcus used his remaining strength to shove me toward the access road. "Chemical weapons," he gasped, professional mind still working despite his condition. "Defoliants, water purification compounds, anything that disrupts organic bonds. Tell Nora." His voice trailed off as his eyes fixed on something behind me. Several entities now abandoning pretense of human mimicry, advancing directly toward our position with evident purpose, water flowing around and through their forms as they closed distance with shocking speed. I ran then, survival instinct overriding professional obligation as darkness descended fully. Behind me came sounds no human throat could produce. Deep vibrations interspersed with what might have been Marcus's screams, though so distorted by water effects as to be barely recognizable. My legs pumped mechanically, every muscle burning with exhaustion as I forged ahead through increasingly waterlogged terrain, the emergency lights ahead flickering like distant stars through the thickening fog. The entities pursued relentlessly, their movements visible in my peripheral vision as dark shapes flowing rather than walking alongside my route. They maintained precise distance, close enough to threaten, far enough to prolong the psychological torment of pursued prey. When I stumbled into a knee-deep pool that hadn't been visible in the darkness, cold mud immediately clutched at my calves with deliberate pressure. I tore free with frantic strength, the sensation of finger-like appendages breaking contact sending waves of revulsion through my body. The black discoloration Marcus had exhibited now appeared on my own exposed skin, advancing slowly but visibly upward from each point of contact with the entity-controlled water. The park access road appeared suddenly through fog that parted as if orchestrated for dramatic effect. 2 ranger vehicles sat abandoned, emergency lights still functioning, but no human presence evident. The ground around them had transformed into shallow pools reflecting red and blue pulses skyward. I reached the first vehicle and wrenched open the door, finding keys still in the ignition, a small mercy in our unfolding catastrophe. As I turned the key, dark water began seeping through door seals and floor vents, rising with unnatural speed inside the cabin. The engine caught, but immediately sputtered as water infiltrated systems designed to remain dry. I abandoned the vehicle as water reached the seat cushions, flowing not randomly, but with evident purpose toward my position. The second vehicle proved more resistant, its elevated chassis designed for backwoods terrain offering precious additional seconds. As the engine roared to life, I glimpsed through the rearview mirror what remained of Marcus Thompson being half-carried, half-dragged by multiple entities toward the tree line. His form still recognizably human, but now glistening with the same mud-slick exterior as his captors, movements suggesting neither resistance nor assistance, but something transitional between states of being. I floored the accelerator as water began breaching this vehicle too, tires throwing rooster tails of muddy spray as I navigated the increasingly submerged road. The last image before darkness and distance obscured my view was dozens of shapes emerging from the surrounding forest, all converging on the headwaters of the Mississippi, patient, coordinated, and terrifyingly purposeful in their advance. The command center at park headquarters had transformed into a military-style operation during my absence. National Guard units established perimeters around buildings still above water level, while scientific teams in hazmat suits processed samples and monitored equipment. Nora's expression upon my arrival spoke volumes. Relief at my survival instantly replaced by devastation at Marcus's absence. "We've lost contact with 17 other parks across the state," she informed me without preamble. All reporting the same phenomena: water levels rising, unidentified biological activity, staff disappearances. The tactical maps displayed throughout the room told a story more frightening than any folklore. Blue expansion indicators showing water systems connecting across Minnesota's northern regions, precisely as Marcus had predicted. My debriefing became a scientific inquisition, biologists and hydrologists questioning every observation, while medical teams treated the advancing discoloration on my extremities with experimental compounds. The entity's composition defied conventional classification, neither fully mineral nor organic, but some hybrid state incorporating elements of both, plus fragments of absorbed biological material, including human remains. Most disturbing were microscopic analyses of water samples showing radical alteration at the molecular level, hydrogen and oxygen bonds modified in ways theoretical physics suggested were impossible. "It's not just controlling water," explained Dr. Abernathy, the lead scientist. "It's fundamentally changing water's properties at the quantum level, creating a medium that supports its consciousness." The strategic response fractured along predictable lines between scientific and military approaches. Chemical countermeasures showed limited effectiveness. Compounds that would normally purify water or eliminate biological contaminants simply became incorporated into the entity's expanding structure. Physical barriers proved temporarily effective but required constant reinforcement as water pressure increased systematically against weakness points. Most concerning was the entity's accelerating adaptation to our countermeasures, each failed attempt seemingly providing them information for improved resistance. "They're learning faster than we are," Nora observed grimly during one tactical meeting. "And they have a lot more water than we have chemicals." The turning point came 3 days into the crisis, when satellite imagery confirmed the pattern's exponential expansion. Water bodies across northern Minnesota had established connections previously impossible according to geological surveys, creating what one hydrologist termed a neural network, with the Mississippi headwaters functioning as a central processing hub. Communication between entities no longer required physical proximity. Actions coordinated across hundreds of miles, with synchronization suggesting instantaneous information exchange. When Guard units attempted establishing a containment perimeter 10 miles from Itasca, water levels within the boundary rose precisely enough to neutralize the effort without expending unnecessary resources. The strategic intelligence directing these actions had evolved beyond reaction into anticipation. The indigenous delegation arrived as federal authorities prepared evacuation orders for communities along major waterways. Elders from several tribes entered our command center without formal invitation, but with purpose and authority that commanded immediate respect. Their spokesperson, an Ojibwe woman I recognized from cultural events during my ranger service, addressed our assemblage with disturbing directness. "You awakened them by breaking ancient agreements. The balance maintained for centuries has been destroyed by chemicals, by noise, by disrespect. They reclaim what was always theirs." Rather than hostility, her words carried resignation, the inevitability of natural forces reasserting dominance over temporary human occupation. What followed transformed our understanding of both the threat and potential resolution. Traditional knowledge preserved through generations described not a singular entity, but a collective consciousness distributed through water systems, dormant for centuries following agreements established during early contact periods. These agreements, maintained through specific rituals, boundaries, and behavioral protocols, had been systematically violated by industrial development, shoreline construction, and chemical contamination. Most critically, the headwaters of major river systems represented not simply geographical features, but communication nodes where human representatives had historically renewed these agreements through ceremonial means. The timing of the current crisis corresponded precisely with the first mist renewal cycle in over 4 centuries. The proposed solution defied scientific skepticism and military practicality alike. A ceremonial delegation to the Mississippi headwaters, carrying specific offerings and proposed terms for restored coexistence. My role became unavoidably central due to both my experience with the entities and my mentor relationship with Marcus, who the elders believed now existed in a transitional state between human consciousness and the collective water entity. "You must speak for both worlds now," the Ojibwe elder told me privately. "They will recognize your voice, your connection to one they have absorbed. The unspoken reality that I might well be surrendering myself to the same fate that claimed Marcus hung between us, acknowledged but irrelevant against the broader stakes." Dawn on the 7th day found me standing at the recreated stone crossing marking the Mississippi's headwaters, now submerged beneath 6 feet of unnaturally still water. Behind me, a ceremonial delegation maintained continuous prayer and ritual offerings, their activities creating what sensors registered as localized stabilization in water molecular structure. Before me stretched Lake Itasca, its surface reflecting sunrise in patterns too geometric to be natural. Concentric circles and intersecting lines forming communication symbols documented in petroglyphs centuries old. I entered the water carrying only items specified by traditional protocol, specific minerals, plant materials, and a small portion of my own blood collected during preparatory ceremonies. The cold struck immediately, but without the numbing quality experienced during previous contact, suggesting selective response rather than inherent property. What transpired in those next hours exists in official records as negotiated environmental stabilization through methods combining traditional knowledge and experimental biochemical exchange. My personal experience defies conventional language. Consciousness simultaneously present in my physical body and distributed throughout the water surrounding me. Communication occurring through direct concept transfer rather than language. Marcus's presence manifested not as individual identity, but as translated interface between human cognition and the entity's distributed awareness. The entities, or more accurately, the singular consciousness expressed through multiple water bodies, conveyed both grievance and willingness to restore balance through renewed protocols acknowledging its fundamental right to maintain water purity. The agreement established new boundaries, purification requirements for human water use, and ceremonial maintenance schedules tied to seasonal cycles. As scientific instruments recorded stabilizing water levels across the region, I returned to shore carrying understanding no human language fully captures. Knowledge of ancient consciousness viewing humanity's entire existence as mere moments in water's eternal cycle, patience spanning geological ages, and willingness to share rather than reclaim its domain if approached with appropriate respect. Whether this resolution represents temporary accommodation or lasting coexistence remains for future generations to maintain, but I departed Ranger service permanently that day, my remaining years dedicated to teaching what water remembers and what it might choose to forget should our fragile agreement once again be broken. My boots sink into the damp earth as I unload my gear near Gunflint Lake in Superior National Forest, the Minnesota chill biting my knuckles. I'm Vernon Halstead, 64 years old, and I call Rochester home, a solid 4-hour drive south. After 35 years as a park ranger, I retired, but this forest's been calling me back. I figured a camping trip would settle the itch. I'm not alone. My old ranger buddy, Doreen, a tough 50-year-old with a smoker's rasp, insisted on joining. Then there's her cousin Felix, a jittery 30-something mechanic, and his girlfriend, Ines, a quiet nurse who's all business. We're pitched near the lake's edge, pines towering like silent guards, the water glassy under a gray sky. Doreen's already got a fire going, tossing in twigs while cracking dark jokes about frostbite. I grin, but my chest's tight. This place feels different from my ranger days. Felix is wrestling with his tent, cursing when the poles snap, and Ines is organizing our food, her hand steady but her eyes darting to the trees. I'm setting up my old Ranger tent, the canvas worn but reliable, same one I used on patrols. The forest hums, loons on the lake, a faint wind rustling leaves. It's peaceful, but there's an edge, like the air's holding its breath. I shake it off, blaming my creaky joints. Felix finally gets his tent up, high-fiving Ines like he's won a prize. Doreen's teasing him, saying he'd never survive a real storm. I'm unpacking my stove, remembering nights out here chasing poachers or lost hikers. This forest has stories, whispers of things older than the trees. I never bought into the Wendigo tales, those Algonquian legends about a cannibal spirit stalking the woods. Just spooky stuff to keep kids in line, right? But standing here, I feel watched, like something's sizing us up. I push the thought away, focusing on the fire's crackle. Ines calls us over, pointing out a weird patch of ice on the ground, sharp and jagged, like it froze mid-explosion. "This isn't normal," she says, frowning. Doreen shrugs, saying it's just Minnesota being Minnesota, but I'm not so sure. The ice looks wrong, almost deliberate. Felix laughs, kicking at it, and a piece breaks off, glinting like bone. My stomach twists, but I don't say anything. No need to spook the crew on night one. We're here to camp, not chase ghost stories. Still, my hand brushes my knife, clipped to my belt. The sun's dipping, painting the lake blood orange. We're swapping stories. Doreen's got a wild one about a bear she scared off with a flashlight. Felix is bragging about fixing a busted snowmobile in a blizzard. Ines stays quiet, listening, her eyes flicking to the woods. I share a tame ranger tale about a hiker who thought moss was lettuce and got sick. They laugh, but I'm scanning the tree line. Something's off, not a sound, just a feeling, like the forest's too still. I tell myself it's just being back after years away. Felix tries to impress Ines by juggling rocks, dropping half of them, and Doreen's cackling, calling him a clown. I'm sipping coffee, the bitter taste grounding me, but my eyes keep drifting to the dark. I'm remembering a ranger report from way back. A camper found frozen solid, mid-step, no explanation. We blamed a freak storm, but the details never sat right. Now, that memory's clawing at me. I check my knife again, an old habit, and notice Ines watching me, her face unreadable. I step away to grab more firewood, my flashlight cutting through the gloom. The trees are thick here, swallowing light like a void. I bend to pick up a branch, and a chill runs through me. Not the cold, something deeper, like I'm not alone. I swing my light, catching nothing but pines. My heart's thudding, and I laugh at myself, feeling like a jumpy rookie. Still, I'm gripping my knife as I head back, the beam shaking. The others are still by the fire, oblivious, but that chill stuck with me, cold and horror-filled. Back at camp, Doreen's teaching Felix how to tie a proper knot, and he's butchering it, laughing. Ines is sketching the lake in a notebook, her pencil scratching softly. I toss the wood on the fire, sparks flying, and try to relax. The night's crisp, stars sharp overhead. Felix starts talking about Wendigo legends, his voice low, like he's half joking. Doreen snorts, saying it's nonsense, but Ines goes still, her pencil pausing. I force a chuckle, brushing it off, but my gut's twisting. The forest feels alive, watching, waiting. We're bundling up now, the cold sinking in. Doreen's yawning. Felix is whispering to Ines, and I'm banking the fire. I'm about to suggest we turn in when I hear it. A faint wail, high and keening, like wind but sharper, human but not. It's far off, barely there, but it cuts through the night like a blade. The others freeze, eyes wide. Doreen mutters, "What the hell?" I don't answer, my hand on my knife, staring into the dark. Something disturbing's out there, and I'm starting to think this trip was a terrible idea. Morning fog clings to Gunflint Lake, and I'm up early, poking at the fire's embers, my breath visible in the cold. That wail last night kept me awake, my knife under my pillow like some paranoid rookie. I'm trying to play it cool, but my gut's churning. Something's wrong here. Doreen's brewing coffee, her eyes puffy, like she didn't sleep either. Felix is complaining about a ripped backpack, blaming a raccoon, but the tear's too clean, like a blade cut it. Ines is quiet, checking our food supplies, and I notice some cans are missing, not scattered, just gone. It's disturbing, like someone, or something, took them. Felix is freaking out about his bag, saying he's cursed, and Doreen tells him to chill, but her voice is tight. I'm inspecting the campsite, finding scratches on a nearby tree, deep and jagged, too high for a bear. My heart skips, but I keep it to myself. Ines notices my frown and asks, "You see something?" I shrug, muttering about wildlife, but her eyes narrow. She's sharp, and I'm not fooling her. Felix, oblivious, starts joking about haunted forests, but it lands flat. I'm thinking about a ranger report from years ago. Campers swearing they heard voices in these woods, mimicking their own. I brushed it off then. Not now. We decide to hike to a nearby ridge for a better view of the lake, hoping to shake this uneasy vibe. I'm leading, my old ranger map crinkled but trusty. Doreen's behind me, griping about the cold, while Felix and Ines trail, bickering about who packed the wrong snacks. The trail's steep, slick with frost, and I'm watching for signs. Broken branches, weird tracks. Halfway up, I spot something. A footprint, human-like but elongated, toes splayed unnaturally. My stomach twists. I cover it with my boot before the others see, but Ines catches my glance. "What was that?" she asks. I lie, saying it's nothing, but my voice cracks. Felix slips on ice, cursing loud enough to echo, and Doreen snaps at him to watch his step. Tension's creeping in, and I'm kicking myself for not checking the campsite better. I should have known. Ranger instincts don't lie. Like that time I found a poacher's snare, the forest too quiet, animals gone. It's like that now. No birds, no squirrels, just our footsteps. Ines points out more ice patches, sharp and wrong, like they grew overnight. "This isn't natural," she says, her nurse's calm slipping. Felix laughs it off, but Doreen's quiet, her hand on her hatchet. At the ridge, the lake sparkles below, but the view doesn't lift my mood. The air's heavy, almost scary, and I'm scanning the trees. Something moves, quick, dark, gone before I can focus. My heart's racing, but I don't say anything. Doreen's telling a story about a busted patrol jeep to lighten things, but Felix interrupts, whining about his sore feet. Ines is studying the ground, finding more of those icy spikes. "They're spreading," she mutters. I nod, my mind flashing to Wendigo tales. Hunger that twists you, ice that follows. I tell myself it's just stories, but I'm not sure anymore. We head back, the trail feeling tighter, like the forest closing in. Felix is lagging, and Doreen's barking at him to keep up. I'm at the rear, my knife in easy reach, eyes on the shadows. A twig snaps to our right, and I freeze, but there's nothing when I look. Ines whispers, "You heard that, right?" I nod, no point lying now. The wail comes again, faint but closer, like a voice stretched thin. Felix goes pale, and Doreen grips her hatchet tighter. "Probably just wind," she says, but her eyes say she's scared. I'm kicking myself for bringing them here. Back at camp, the fire's out, and that rank smell, rotten and sharp, hits us. Felix gags, blaming a dead fish, but I know better. I check the perimeter, finding more scratches on trees, forming a rough circle around us. My blood runs cold. Ines is repacking our gear, her hands shaking, while Doreen tries to relight the fire, cursing when the wood won't catch. Felix is useless, pacing, muttering about leaving. I want to agree, but the truck's hours away, and dusk is creeping in. The forest feels alive, watching, and I'm starting to think those myths aren't myths. Doreen finally gets the fire going, but it's weak, spitting smoke. Ines finds a bone near her tent, small, gnawed, not from any animal we eat. "This was placed here," she says, voice low. Felix freaks, saying we're cursed, and Doreen tells him to shut up, but she's rattled too. I'm sharpening a stick, an old ranger trick, my mind racing. The wail, the tracks, the ice, it's all adding up to something horror-filled. I'm about to suggest we pack up when Felix screams, pointing at the lake. Ripples spread, big ones, but there's no wind, no fish. Something's moving out there. I'm grabbing my flashlight, heart pounding, when the wail cuts through again, sharp and close, like it's right behind us. Doreen curses, Felix stumbles back, and Ines drops the bone, her face white. My light sweeps the trees, catching nothing, but the air's freezing now, unnatural, like winter's clawing at us. "Stay by the fire," I say, voice steady, but inside, I'm unraveling. The scratches, the missing food, that sound, it's no animal. Something stalking us, something disturbing, and I'm not sure we can outrun it. The forest's alive with malice, and we're right in its grip. The wail cuts off, but my heart's still jackhammering as I sweep my flashlight across the trees. The air's so cold it burns my lungs, and that rank smells thicker, like decay crawling up my nose. Doreen's gripping her hatchet, eyes wild, while Felix is backed against a tree, whispering, "What was that?" Ines is frozen, staring at the lake where those ripples spread, no cause in sight. I'm trying to stay calm, but this is horror, straight up, and my ranger instincts are screaming we're not alone. "Stay by the fire," I say, voice low, but my hands are shaking. Something's out there, and it's not just watching anymore. Felix is babbling about leaving, but Doreen shuts him down. We're not running blind in the dark. She's right, but her voice cracks, betraying her fear. I'm checking the campsite, noticing the ice patches spreading, creeping toward our tents like veins. It's unnatural, scary as hell. Ines kneels, touching one, and yanks her hand back. "It's warm," she whispers, her nurse's calm gone. I'm thinking of Wendigo stories. Ice that burns, hunger that stalks. I used to laugh them off, like that time a camper swore he saw a figure in the fog, all bones and eyes. Now, I'm not laughing. A twig snaps, close, maybe 20 yards out. I swing my light, catching nothing, but the trees feel alive, pressing in. Felix yelps, pointing at the ground. More bones, small and scattered, like a trail leading into the woods. "This is messed up," he says, voice high. I tell him to stay put, but my own fear's clawing at me. I'm kicking myself for ignoring the signs. The whale, the tracks, the missing food. Like that ranger who found a campsite abandoned, gear frozen solid in July. We blamed a gas leak. Now, I'm doubting everything. Ines starts packing essentials, her hands steady but her eyes darting. "We can't stay," she says, and I nod. But Doreen's arguing, saying the fire's our best shot. Felix is useless, muttering about curses. The wail comes again, louder, splitting the air like a scream stretched thin. It's not wind, not human. It's something else, something disturbing. My flashlight catches a shadow, tall, gaunt, moving too fast, gone in a blink. My blood freezes. "Did you see that?" I ask, but Doreen's already grabbing more wood, pretending she didn't. We huddle closer, weapons out, my knife, Doreen's hatchet, Ines with a tent pole. Felix has nothing, just panic. The fire's flickering, and the ice is everywhere now, cracking underfoot. Another sound, a whisper, like my name, faint but clear, from the trees. I freeze, heart pounding. "Vernon!" It hisses again, mimicking my voice. Ines hears it too, her face white. "That's not normal," she says, gripping her pole. Felix is crying, saying we're gonna die. Doreen snaps at him to man up, but her hands are shaking. This is no myth, it's real, and it knows me. The whispers multiply, overlapping, calling all our names. Doreen, Felix, Ines. It's like the forest is mocking us, twisting our voices. I'm remembering a ranger buddy who quit after hearing his kid's voice in these woods, miles from anyone. We thought he was drunk. Now I get it. The fire's dying, and the cold's biting deeper, unnatural, like it's alive. Ines finds more scratches on her tent, fresh, like claws raked through. "It's circling us," she says, voice barely audible. My stomach drops. This thing's playing with us, and it's terrifying. Felix bolts for his tent, screaming about hiding, but Doreen grabs him, yelling he'll get us killed. He shoves her, hard, and she stumbles, hatchet dropping. I'm shouting at them to stop, but the whispers are louder, drowning us out. A tree shakes, violently, 10 feet away, no wind, just force. Ines gasps, pointing. My light catches eyes, glowing, too high, too wrong. They vanish, but the wail follows, so close it rattles my teeth. Felix is sobbing, Doreen's cursing, and I'm gripping my knife, knowing we're out of time. I'm barking orders, grab gear, stay together, when something slams the ground, hard, shaking the earth. Dirt flies, and that smell hits like a punch. Ines screams, dropping her pole, and Felix is scrambling backward, tripping over ice. Doreen's back on her feet, hatchet up, but her face is pale. My light's shaking as I scan the dark, catching a shape, long, skeletal, crouched just beyond the firelight. It's not human, not animal. It's horror, pure and raw, and it's here. My heart's in my throat, knowing this thing's done waiting. The fire sputters, nearly out, and the whispers turn to laughter, low and cruel, echoing from everywhere. Felix is curled up, useless. Ines is grabbing her pack, and Doreen's shouting at me to do something. I'm trying, but my ranger tricks are nothing against this. The shape moves, closer, its outline sharpening, claws, teeth, eyes like voids. The cold's unbearable now, freezing my breath, and the ice is climbing the trees, cracking like gunfire. Something's clearly wrong, and we're in its trap, with no way out and terror closing in fast. The ground shakes again, and I'm yelling, "Move now." That skeletal shape in the dark isn't waiting, it's coming. My flashlight's useless, the beam swallowed by fog, but I grab my pack, knife out. Doreen's hauling Felix, who's a sobbing mess, while Ines slings her bag, eyes wide but focused. The fire's dead, ice cracking underfoot, and that wail, sharp, hungry, splits the air. This is horror, no question, and we're running blind. The truck's miles off, but staying suicide. I'm shoving everyone toward the trail, praying my ranger memory holds. The cold's a blade, and that rank smell chokes us as we bolt. Doreen's cursing, hatchet swinging, keeping Felix moving. He's tripping, slowing us, and I'm biting back the urge to scream at him. Ines is behind me, her breath ragged, clutching her tent pole like a spear. The whispers chase us, our names, twisted, laughing from the trees. I've faced blizzards, bears, but this is scary, soul deep. Like that ranger who vanished near Gunflint, leaving only his boots. We thought he deserted. Now, I'm sure he didn't. A branch snaps left, then right, like it's pacing us. I'm pushing harder, thorns tearing my hands. The trail's a nightmare, slick with ice that shouldn't be here. Felix slips, crashing hard, and Doreen yanks him up, yelling he's going to get us killed. I'm at the front, heart pounding, scanning for the ridge we hit earlier. A low growl rumbles, so close my bones vibrate. Ines gasps, "It's right there." I swing my light, catching a glimpse. Gaunt, towering, claws glinting. It's gone in a blink, but my stomach's in knots. We're not outrunning this thing. It's toying with us, like a cat with a mouse. The cold's worse, freezing my fingers, and I'm praying we don't freeze before it strikes. We hit a fork, and I hesitate, left or right. My map's in my head, but panic's clouding it. Doreen's shouting to go left, but Ines says right, her voice sharp. Felix is whimpering, useless, and I'm kicking myself for not planning better. I pick right, trusting my gut, but the trail narrows, trees clawing at us. A rock sails past, smashing a pine, and Felix screams. It's throwing things, hurting us. I'm thinking of horror flicks where the group splits up and dies. Not happening. Stay close. I yell, but my voice is hoarse, drowned by another wail. Closer, hungrier. Half a mile in, the ground dips, and I nearly fall into a gully. Ines grabs my arm, steadying me, but her face is pale, like she's seen death. The whispers are louder, mimicking Doreen now, calling Felix's name in her voice. He's freaking, thinking it's her, and I have to grab him, shaking him hard. It's not her. I snap. Doreen's right beside us, but her eyes are wild, like she's doubting herself. The ice is everywhere, spiking up like traps, and I'm dodging it, my boots slipping. This is life and death, and every step's a gamble. A clearing opens, moonlight hitting us, and for a second, I think we've got a shot. Then the wail turns to a screech, so loud my ears ring. It's behind us, close. I spin, light catching it. Emaciated, eyes like black pits, moving too fast. "Run!" I shout, shoving Felix forward. Doreen's swinging her hatchet at nothing. Ines is sprinting, and I'm last, knife up, ready to fight if it comes. The truck's maybe 2 miles off, but it feels like a lifetime. My lungs burn, my legs scream, but I'm not stopping. This thing's hunting, and we're the prey. Something slams into a tree ahead, bark exploding, and I veer left, off the trail, no choice. The woods are thicker, branches snapping in my face. Felix is slowing, gasping, and Doreen's dragging him, cursing. Ines is keeping up, but her pole's gone, lost in the chaos. Another rock flies, grazing my leg, pain flaring. It's not just chasing, it's aiming. I'm thinking of that ranger's boots, frozen in the snow, and I'm praying we don't end up like him. The growls are constant, echoing, like it's everywhere. My heart's pounding, knowing we're not safe yet. We're deep in the woods now, the trail long gone, and I'm navigating by instinct. Doreen's yelling about the truck, but I'm not sure we're even close. Felix is a dead weight, and Ines is checking his pulse, her nurse skills kicking in. He's in shock, she says, voice shaking. The cold's unbearable, my breath frosting, and the ice is climbing the trees, cracking like bones. A shadow moves, right beside us, and I swing my knife, hitting air. The whale's so close it's like it's inside my skull, and I'm shouting to keep moving, knowing one slip could end us. I'm guiding us toward what I hope is the road when the ground shakes, hard, like a quake. Trees sway, and a roar, deep, guttural, rips through the night. It's not chasing anymore, it's attacking. Ines screams, pointing at claw marks, fresh, on a tree we just passed. Felix is crying, Doreen's gripping her hatchet, and I'm scanning the dark, knife ready. The truck's out there, our only hope, but this thing's closing in, and the horror's not letting go. We're running for our lives, but the danger's everywhere, and I'm not sure we'll make it. My boots pound the frozen ground, the truck's faint outline flickering through the trees. The whale's a constant scream now, splitting my head, and that thing's so close I feel its hunger. Doreen's dragging Felix, who's barely conscious, while Ines runs beside me, her face grim. The cold's a living thing, clawing my skin, and the ice is everywhere, spiking up like teeth. I'm shouting for the truck, my voice raw, but my ranger instincts are failing. This horror's not natural, and I'm cursing myself for coming back to this forest. Retirement was supposed to be quiet, not a graveyard. We're almost at the road when Felix collapses, dead weight, pulling Doreen down. "Get up," she yells, but he's out, eyes glassy. Ines kneels, checking his pulse, her hands shaking. "He's alive, but weak," she says. I'm scanning the dark, knife up, hearing claws scrape nearby. The truck's 50 yards off, keys in my pocket, but we're stuck. The whale turns to laughter, cruel, echoing my name. I'm thinking of that ranger's boots, all that was left, and my gut screams we're next. Doreen's cursing, trying to lift Felix, but it's slowing us. I make the call, my deadly mistake. "Leave him," I say, voice hard. "We'll come back with help." Doreen's eyes blaze, like I've betrayed her. "No way," she snaps, staying put. Ines hesitates, torn, but nods at me, trusting my lead. I grab her arm, pulling her toward the truck, thinking speed's our only shot. The thing roars, trees shaking, and I glance back. Doreen's still with Felix, hatchet up, screaming at the dark. The shadow lunges, gaunt and massive, claws flashing. Doreen swings, but it's too fast, and her scream cuts off, blood spraying the ice. Ines gasps, stumbling, and I'm dragging her, my heart breaking. "We can't stop," I yell, but her eyes are on Doreen, on the thing tearing into her. Felix is gone too, a limp shape in the dark. My mistake, splitting us up, cost them both. The truck's close, but the whale's right behind, claws scraping the ground. Ines is sobbing, her strength fading, and I'm shoving her toward the cab, fumbling for keys. The cold's choking me, the smell of blood and rot everywhere, and I'm praying we make it. I'm at the truck, yanking the door open, when Ines trips, her ankle caught in ice. "Go," she screams, but I'm not leaving her. I run back, knife out, and the thing's there. Eyes like voids, teeth bared, towering over her. I swing, blade sinking into its arm, but it's like cutting stone. It screeches, swiping, and I dodge, barely. Ines is crawling, blood on her leg, and I'm hauling her up, my arms burning. The truck's right there, but the thing's faster, lunging again, claws grazing my back, pain exploding. I shove Ines into the cab, slamming the door, and dive for the driver's seat. The keys slip, falling under the seat, and I'm cursing, digging, as the thing pounds the truck, metal groaning. Ines is screaming, blood soaking her jeans, and I'm thinking of Doreen's face, Felix's limp body. My fault. I find the keys, jam them in, and the engine roars. The thing's claw smashes the window, glass flying, but I floor it, tires spinning on ice. We're moving, but the whale follows, fading slow. The road's a blur, Ines whimpering beside me, her hands pressing her wound. I'm gripping the wheel, blood dripping from my back, my mind replaying Doreen's scream, Felix's collapse. I was supposed to protect them, Ranger's oath, but I failed. The Wendigo's real, a horror I can't unsee, and it took half my crew. Ines is alive, but barely, and I'm driving into dawn, the forest shrinking behind. The ice, the whispers, those eyes, they're burned into me, a tragedy I'll carry forever. We hit the highway, lights flickering far off, but safety's a lie. Ines is quiet, her breathing shallow, and I'm praying she holds on. I'm thinking of ranger stories, campers gone, voices in the dark, warnings I ignored. My call to leave Felix was the mistake, the one that broke us. Doreen's blood, Felix's body, Ines's pain, it's on me. The forest's behind, but its horrors in my bones, in the rearview mirror, in every shadow. I'm alive, but at what cost? The truck rumbles on, Ines's hand cold in mine, and I'm wondering if we'll ever be free. The Wendigos out there, waiting, its hunger endless. I failed my friends, my duty, and the guilt's heavier than any wound. This wasn't a camping trip, it was a nightmare, and I let us into it. The road stretches, empty, and I'm driving, carrying a tragedy that'll haunt me till I die, knowing the forest's not done with me yet. My pack's heavy as I trudge through the pines toward Kawashiwi Lake in Superior National Forest, the Minnesota air sharp with cedar and frost. I'm Orson Caldwell, 60 years old, and I live in Mankato, a good 3-hour haul from here. Retired after decades as a park ranger, I couldn't resist one last camping trip in the wilds I used to patrol. I'm not solo. My neighbor Cal, a gruff 55-year-old carpenter, signed on for the adventure. His daughter, Rhea, a 22-year-old artist with a sharp wit, and her friend Tobin, a lanky barista who's all nervous energy, round out the crew. We're setting up camp by the lake, its surface still as glass under a fading sun. Cal's already hammering tent stakes, muttering about shoddy gear, while Rhea sketches the lake, her pencil flying. Tobin's trying to start a fire, failing spectacularly, and I'm pitching my old ranger tent, its stitches worn but tough. The forest buzzes, crickets, a distant owl, waves lapping the shore. It's serene, but there's a prickle on my neck, like the lake's watching me. I've patrolled these woods forever, dealt with lost hikers, drunk campers, but tonight feels off. I shake it, figuring it's just the years catching up. Rhea calls us over, showing us her sketch, Kawashiwi's shore, but with weird, wispy shapes in the water. Just my imagination, she laughs, but her eyes linger on the lake. Cal grunts, saying she's been reading too many ghost stories. I'm unpacking my stove, thinking of old ranger tales about Nabinagabe, Ojibwe water spirits that sing you to your doom. Pure myth, I told myself, like that time a camper swore he heard a woman's voice from the lake, begging for help. Drunk, probably, but now, I'm not so sure. Tobin finally gets the fire going, cheering like he's conquered Everest. Cal's ribbing him, saying it's a miracle we're not all frozen. I'm sipping coffee, its warmth steadying me, but my eyes keep drifting to the water. Something's wrong, not a sound, just a feeling, like the lake's too quiet. I check my knife, clipped to my belt, an old habit. Rhea's joking about painting a masterpiece out here, but Tobin's fidgety, glancing at the trees. I try to relax, telling a story about a hiker who got stuck in a bog and swore fish were laughing at him. The sky's bruising purple now, stars poking through. We're swapping tales. Cal's got a good one about a botched cabin build. Rhea's riffing on art school drama. Tobin's quiet, poking the fire, then blurts out a story about a local who drowned here years ago, said to haunt the lake. Cal snorts, calling it nonsense, but I'm remembering a report. A swimmer found tangled in weeds, eyes wide open, like she saw something terrifying. I brush it off, but my gut's twisting. The fire crackles, and I'm scanning the shore, feeling eyes on us. Cal's teaching Tobin how to whittle, and it's a disaster, with chips flying, Tobin cursing softly. Rhea's back to sketching, her face lit by the flames, and I'm checking our food stash, noticing some bread's gone soggy, like it got wet. Odd, since it was sealed. I don't mention it, not wanting to spook anyone. The lake's edge glints, and for a second, I think I see ripples, small but deliberate, no wind to cause them. My heart skips, but when I blink, it's still. I laugh at myself, feeling like a jumpy kid, but my hand's on my knife. I step away to grab firewood, my flashlight cutting through the dark. The trees are dense, the lake's lapping louder now, almost rhythmic. I bend for a branch, and a chill hits. Not the cold, something deeper, like a whisper I can't hear. I swing my light, catching nothing but pines, but my pulse is racing. Back at camp, Cal's joking, Ria's laughing, Tobin's staring at the water. I toss the wood on, sparks flying, and try to shake the unease. The night's crisp, the fire warm, but that prickle's still there, horror-filled and waiting. Ria notices my tension. "You good, Orson?" she asks, voice low. I nod, forcing a grin. "Just old bones." She doesn't push, but her eyes linger. Tobin's muttering about the lake, saying it feels alive. Cal rolls his eyes, but I'm not so sure. I'm about to suggest we turn in when I hear it. A soft hum, like a woman singing, faint but clear, from the water. The others freeze, Cal's joke dying. "What the hell?" he mutters. My hands on my knife, eyes locked on the lake, knowing something disturbing's out there. The hum fades, but we're all on edge. The fire's glow feeling flimsy against the dark. Cal's gripping his stick, Ria's clutching her sketchbook, and Tobin's pale, whispering about ghosts. I'm trying to stay calm, but my ranger days taught me to trust my gut, and it's screaming. The lake's too still, the air too heavy, like something's waiting to strike. I tell everyone to stick close, but my voice is tight. This isn't just a camping trip anymore. Something scary's waking up, and we're right in its path. Morning mist curls over Kawashiwi Lake, and I'm up, coffee brewing, my eyes gritty from barely sleeping. That humming song last night, soft, like a woman's voice, kept me on edge, my knife close. Cal's snoring in his tent, Ria's sketching by the fire, and Tobin's checking our gear, muttering about wet boots. I'm trying to act normal, but my gut's screaming trouble. I check the campsite, noticing our water jugs tipped over, the ground soaked, like it was deliberate. No leaks, no cracks, just spilled. It's disturbing, like something messed with us while we slept. I don't say anything, not yet. Cal stumbles out, grumbling about the cold, and spots the jug. "Clumsy kids," he says, glaring at Tobin, who swears he didn't touch it. Ria's quiet, her sketchbook open to that eerie drawing of wispy shapes in the lake. I'm inspecting the shore, finding faint marks in the mud, long, thin, like fingers dragged through. My heart skips. They're not animal tracks, not human either. I've seen every print in these woods, and this is new, scary. Tobin notices me staring and asks, "What's that?" I shrug, saying it's probably nothing, but my voice is shaky. We decide to hike along the lake to a nearby cove, hoping to clear the weird vibe. I'm leading, my old ranger map tucked in my pocket. Cal's behind, complaining about his knees, while Ria and Tobin trail, her teasing him about his soggy boots. The trail's muddy, the lake's edge glinting through the trees, but it feels wrong. Too still, like the water's holding its breath. I spot a fish floating, belly up, its eyes cloudy, like it drowned in air. My stomach twists, but I keep moving, not wanting to spook the others. Ria's humming, then stops, saying it feels familiar, like last night's song. Halfway to the cove, Tobin trips on a root, cursing loud enough to startle a loon. Cal snaps at him to watch it, and the tension's creeping in. We're all on edge, though nobody admits it. I'm kicking myself for not checking the jug last night. Ranger instincts don't lie, like that time I found a poacher's trap. The forest too quiet. It's like that now. No birds, just the lake's faint lapping. Ria points out more dead fish, clustered near the shore, their scales glinting like coins. "That's not normal," she says, her artist's eye catching details I miss. I nod, my mind on those Nabinu ape tales, spirits pulling you under. At the cove, the water's clear, but the air's heavy, almost horror-filled. Cal's trying to skip rocks, but they sink fast, like the lake swallowing them. Tobin's fidgety, saying he feels watched, and Ria's sketching the cove, her pencil shaking. I'm checking the map, planning our way back, when I see ripples, slow, deliberate, moving toward us, no wind, no fish. My heart's pounding, but I don't point it out. I'm remembering a ranger report. A kayaker found floating, tangled in weeds, like something held her down. I thought it was an accident. Now I'm doubting it. We head back, the trail feeling narrower, the lake closer, like it's following us. Cal's quiet, sensing something's off, and Ria's clutching her sketchbook like a shield. Tobin's lagging, whining about his boots, and I'm annoyed, wishing I'd come alone. A twig snaps across the lake, sharp, and we all freeze. My flashlight's in my hand, though it's daylight, and I'm scanning the water. Nothing, but the ripples are back, bigger, circling. Just a fish, I say, but my voice is thin. Tobin's pale, muttering about ghosts, and even Cal's gripping his knife now. Back at camp, the fire's out, and our tents are damp, like they were splashed. That song hums again, faint, from the lake, and Rhea gasps, saying it's the same tune she was humming. Cal curses, blaming the wind, but there's no breeze. I'm checking the perimeter, finding more of those finger-like marks, forming a half-circle around us. My blood runs cold. Tobin's freaking out, saying we should leave, but the truck's hours away, and dusk is creeping in. I want to agree, but we're stuck, and the lake's watching, waiting. Rhea finds something by her tent, a smooth, wet stone, carved with a spiral, like it was placed there. This wasn't here, she says, voice low. Tobin's babbling about curses, and Cal tells him to shut up, but his hands are shaking. I'm sharpening a stick, an old ranger trick, my mind racing. The hum, the ripples, the marks. It's adding up to something scary, something tied to those water spirit stories. I'm about to suggest we pack up when the lake ripples again, violently, and a shadow moves under the surface, too big for a fish, too fast for anything natural. I'm grabbing my knife, heart hammering, when the hum turns to a voice, soft, pleading, calling my name. Orson. It whispers, clear as day, from the water. Cal hears it too, his face white, and Rhea's clutching that stone, eyes wide. Tobin's backing away, tripping over gear. My light sweeps the lake, catching nothing, but the air's heavy, like a storm's brewing. Stay together, I say, but my voice cracks. The marks, the song, that shadow, something's out there, something disturbing, and it's not just a myth. The lake's alive, and we're in its grip. The voice calling my name from the lake fades, but my heart's still pounding as I grip my knife, eyes locked on the water. The air's thick, heavy with that damp, rotten smell, like something's rotting under the surface. Cal's cursing, his knife out, while Rhea clutches that carved stone, her face pale. Tobin's shaking, backing toward the tents, whispering, "We're screwed." I'm trying to keep it together, but this is horror, raw and real, and my ranger instincts are screaming we're in deep. Stay by the fire. I bark, relighting it fast, but the flames sputter, like the lake's choking them. Something's out there, and it's done hiding. Rhea's voice cracks. That was my name too, she says, pointing at the water. Cal snaps. It's just wind, but his hands are trembling. The ripples are constant now, swirling, and the hum's back. Louder, a woman's voice, pleading, "Help me." It's not human, not natural, and it's scary as hell. I'm thinking of Nabina Abe's stories, spirits that lure you in, drown you slow. Like that swimmer I found years ago, tangled in weeds, her face frozen in terror. I wrote it off as a cramp. Now, I'm sure it wasn't. The lake's alive, and it wants us. A splash, sharp and close, makes Tobin yelp. I swing my flashlight, the beam catching something. Pale, sleek, slipping under the surface. My stomach drops. Did you see that? I ask, but Cal's already grabbing more wood, muttering about staying warm. Rhea's sketching frantically, like it'll save her, and Tobin's useless, curled up by the fire. I'm kicking myself for ignoring the signs, the marks, the song, the dead fish. The lake's edge is littered with more stones now, all carved with spirals, like they appeared while we blinked. It's disturbing, and I'm out of excuses. I'm checking the tents when the voice shifts, mimicking Cal. "Rhea, come here." It calls, clear, from the water. Rhea freezes, her pencil snapping. That's not me. Cal shouts, but she's shaking, eyes locked on the lake. I grab her arm, pulling her back. "Don't look at it," I say, but my own fear's clawing at me. The hum's a chorus now, multiple voices, our names weaving together. I'm remembering a ranger buddy who quit after hearing his wife's voice from this lake, miles from home. We thought he was nuts. Now I get it. This is no myth, it's real. Tobin bolts for his tent, screaming about hiding, but I yank him back. We stay together. My voice is sharp, but he's panicking, flailing. Cal's shouting at him to calm down, but the voices are louder, drowning us out. A wave hits the shore, unnatural, soaking our gear. Rhea gasps, pointing. My light catches a shape in the water, humanoid but wrong, with long, webbed fingers and eyes like oil. It's gone in a blink, but my blood's ice. What the hell was that? Cal whispers, his bravado gone. The lake's not just watching, it's hunting. We're huddling by the fire, weapons out. My knife, Cal's knife, Rhea with a tent pole. Tobin's got nothing, just fear. The voices are relentless, calling, pleading, laughing now, cruel and sharp. More stones appear, circling our camp, and the water's creeping closer, like the lake's growing. I'm thinking of horror movies where the monster lures you in, but this is worse, personal, like it knows us. The air's freezing, my breath frosting, and the fire's barely alive. I'm trying to plan, but the voices are in my head, pulling me toward the water. Cal finds something by his tent, a lock of hair, wet, tied with a weed, like an offering. This ain't right, he says, voice low, tossing it into the fire. It sizzles, smelling like burnt flesh, and the voices screech, angry. Tobin's crying, saying we're cursed, and Rhea's clutching her stone, muttering it's warm, like it's alive. I'm barking orders, pack essentials, stay close, but my ranger tricks are useless against this. A shadow moves under the water, big, circling, and the lake churns, waves slapping the shore. My heart's in my throat, knowing we're out of time. The fire dies, and the voices turn to screams, high and piercing, like 100 drowning souls. Rhea drops her sketchbook, pages scattering, and I see her drawings. Faces, pale and eyeless, rising from the lake. I didn't draw those, she whispers, terrified. Cal's swinging his knife at nothing, shouting for it to stop. Tobin's rocking, muttering prayers, and I'm scanning the water, seeing more shapes, dozens, gliding just below. The lake's alive, pulsing with malice, and the horror's undeniable. We're not alone, and it's closing in. Something grabs my ankle, wet, cold, like a hand, and I jerk free, stumbling. The others scream, and I swing my light, catching nothing but ripples. The voices laugh, my name loudest, and the water's at our tents now, flooding the ground. Cal's yelling to run, Rhea's frozen, and Tobin's useless, sobbing. My knife's out, but it's like fighting a storm. The shapes are clearer, pale, grinning, reaching, and the lake's pulling, like a tide we can't resist. Something's clearly wrong, and we're in its trap, with terror swallowing us whole. Water laps at my boots as I shout, "Run now!" The lake's alive, shapes gliding under the surface, their eyeless faces grinning. My knife's out, flashlight shaking, as I shove Rhea toward the trail. Cal's hauling Tobin, who's sobbing, useless, while the voices scream our names, pulling like a tide. The fire's gone, the air's freezing, and that rotten smell chokes us. This is horror, pure and relentless, and we're sprinting blind. The truck's miles off, but staying's death. I'm leading, my ranger memory fuzzy, praying we hit the road. The lake's waves chase us, unnatural, like hands reaching. Cal's cursing, knife swinging, keeping Tobin moving. Rhea's clutching her sketchbook, eyes wide, tripping over roots. The voices are louder, mimicking us, laughing. Orson, stay. I've faced floods, wolves, but this is scary, soul deep. Like that kayaker I found, drowned in shallow water, weeds wrapped tight. I thought it was bad luck. Now I know better. A splash behind us, too close, and I swing my light. Pale arms break the surface, then vanish. My heart's pounding, pushing us faster, thorns tearing my jacket. The trail's a mess, mud and ice, the lake's edge too close. Tobin slips, crashing hard, and Cal yanks him up, yelling he's slowing us. I'm at the front, dodging those carved stones, now scattered like traps. The voices turn to wails, piercing, and Rhea screams. They're in my head. I'm kicking myself for not leaving yesterday. Those marks, the song, I ignored them. A wave hits the shore, soaking us, and I feel it. Cold fingers brushing my leg. I jerk free, shouting to stay out of the water. This thing's hunting, and we're running out of ground. We hit a fork, and I freeze. Left to the road, right to the river. My map's useless, panic clouding my head. Cal's barking to go left, but Rhea's pointing right, saying she saw lights. Tobin's whimpering, dragging us down, and I'm cursing my rusty instincts. I choose left, trusting Cal, but the trail narrows, the lake's waves louder, like it's following. A stone flies, grazing my shoulder, pain flaring. It's not just chasing, it's aiming. I'm thinking of horror flicks where the monster lures you in. Stay together. I yell, but my voice is drowned by wails. Half a mile in, the ground dips, and Rhea stumbles, her sketchbook sinking into mud. "Leave it," I snap, pulling her up, but her eyes are glassy, like she's hearing the voices louder. The lake's closer, water spilling over the trail, and those shapes are everywhere. Pale, gliding, reaching. Cal's shouting at Tobin to move, but he's slow, gasping. Another wave hits, knocking me sideways, and I feel it again. Fingers, wet, gripping my ankle. I slash my knife, hitting nothing, and scramble up, hard in my throat. This is life and death, and we're losing. A clearing opens, moonlight hitting us, and I see the road, maybe a mile off. Hope sparks, then dies as the wails turn to laughter, cruel, echoing. I swing my light, catching a figure, tall, pale, half in the water, smiling with no eyes. "Run!" I yell, shoving Tobin forward. Cal's swinging his knife at shadows. Rhea's sprinting, and I'm last, ready to fight if it grabs us. The truck's close, but the lake's relentless, waves crashing, voices screaming. My lungs burn, my legs scream, but I'm not stopping. This thing won't take us. Something slams the ground, water exploding, and I veer right, off the trail, into thicker woods. Branches claw my face, Cal's cursing, Tobin's a dead weight. Rhea's keeping up, but her breath's ragged, like she's fighting the voices. Another stone flies, smashing a tree, and Tobin screams, slowing us. I'm thinking of that swimmer's face, frozen in terror, and I'm praying we don't end like her. The wails are constant, the shapes circling, and the water's everywhere, flooding the ground. My knife's useless, but I grip it, knowing we're not safe. We're deep in the woods, the road's so close, when the lake surges, a wave knocking Rhea down. She's gasping, half submerged, and I dive for her, pulling her free. The voices scream her name, and I see them. Dozens of pale shapes, hands reaching from the water. Cal's dragging Tobin, shouting for the truck, but it's too far. My flashlight dies, moonlight our only guide, and the cold's unbearable, my hands numb. The shapes are closer, their laughter a blade in my skull, and I'm shouting to keep moving, knowing one slip ends us. I'm guiding us toward the road when a roar, not a wail, a deep, guttural cry, shakes the trees. The water churns, waves crashing like a storm, and the shapes rise, clearer now, pale, eyeless, grinning. Cal's knife is out, Rhea's clinging to me, and Tobin's barely conscious, dragging us down. The truck's in sight, but so are they, gliding faster, hands outstretched. Every step's a fight, every breath a battle, and the horror's not letting go. We're running for our lives, but the lake's pulling, and I'm not sure we'll break free. My boots skid on wet gravel as we hit the road, the truck's outline glinting under moonlight. The lake's roar follows, waves crashing, those pale shapes gliding closer, their voices a deafening scream. Cal's dragging Tobin, who's limp, muttering nonsense, while Rhea's clinging to my arm, her eyes wild. I'm fumbling for the keys, knife useless, my heart pounding. The cold's a vice, the air thick with rot, and I'm cursing myself for this trip. Ranger life taught me to protect, but this horror's beyond me. The truck's our only shot, but the lake's alive, and it's not done with us. Cal reaches the truck, yanking the door, but Tobin collapses, pulling him down. "Get up," Cal shouts, but Tobin's out, eyes glassy. Rhea's gasping, saying the voices are louder, calling her to the water. I'm shoving her toward the cab, keys in hand, when the lake surges, a wave hitting us like a fist. The shapes are everywhere, pale, eyeless, hands grabbing. I slash my knife, hitting nothing but water, and I'm thinking of that kayaker, drowned, her face burned into my memory. My fault for coming back here. I make the mistake, deadly, stupid. "Split up," I yell, thinking we'll distract them. "Cal, get Tobin in, I'll hold them off." Rhea's screaming no, but Cal nods, hauling Tobin into the cab. I'm facing the lake, knife up, shouting at the shapes to come for me. They do, dozens, rising, their laughter a blade. Rhea's running for the truck, but she's slow, the voices pulling her. A hand grabs her leg, pale and webbed, and she screams, falling. I dive for her, but the water's faster, dragging her toward the lake. Cal's in the driver's seat, engine roaring, but he's frozen, watching Rhea. "Go," I yell, but he's not moving. His daughter screams, tearing him apart. I'm fighting the shapes, my knife useless, water choking me. Ria's half submerged, her eyes locked on mine, pleading, then blank, like the lake's taken her soul. A wave hits, and she's gone, pulled under, only ripples left. My screams raw, my heart breaking, and I'm lunging for the water, but Cal grabs me, dragging me back. My mistake, splitting us, killed her. I'm in the truck, Cal flooring it, Tobin slumped in the back. The lake's roar fades, but the voices linger, laughing. Orson. I'm shaking, blood on my hands. Mine, Ria's, I don't know. Cal's sobbing, his knuckles white, and I'm numb, replaying Ria's face, her scream. I was supposed to protect them, but I led us into a trap. The Nabinabe are real, a horror I can't unsee, and they took Ria. Tobin's alive, but broken, muttering about water. I'm driving now, Cal's too gone, and the road's a blur, the forest shrinking. The highway's empty, dawn creeping in, but safety's a lie. Tobin's whispering Ria's name, and Cal's staring at nothing, his daughter gone. I'm gripping the wheel, my back bleeding, my mind on those ranger tales, swimmers lost, voices in the dark. Warnings I ignored. Splitting up was my call, my failure, and Ria paid for it. Her sketchbook's in the mud somewhere, her art silenced. The lake's behind, but its horrors in me, in the silence between us, in every ripple I'll ever see. We hit a gas station, lights harsh, and Cal's still crying, Tobin's catatonic. I'm calling for help, but my voice is hollow, like I'm already drowned. The Nabinabe wanted Ria, and I handed her over, thinking I could fight. Ranger instincts, my ass, I'm no hero. The truck's a coffin, carrying our guilt, our loss. I'm thinking of that kayaker, her eyes wide, and now Ria's with her, lost to the lake. The tragedy's heavy, a weight I'll never shake, and I'm wondering if the spirits let us go or just let us suffer. The road stretches, and I'm driving, Cal's hand on my shoulder, Tobin's whispers filling the cab. The forest's gone, but the horror's not. Those faces, those voices, they're in my head, forever. I failed my crew, my duty, and Ria's scream is my punishment. This wasn't camping, it was a nightmare, and I led us straight to it. The lake's out there, waiting, its hunger endless, and I'm carrying a tragedy that'll haunt me till I die, knowing I'll never go near water again. The sun's up, but it's cold, empty, like the lake stole the light. I'm dropping Cal and Tobin at a hospital, but I'm not staying. I can't face their eyes, their loss. Ria's gone, and it's on me, my call to split up the nail in her coffin. The Nabinabe won, and I'm left with nothing but guilt and a knife that couldn't save her. The road's ahead, but the horror's behind, beside, within me, and I'm driving, knowing the lake's still singing, waiting for the next fool to answer its call.